Hello, everybody. Welcome in Mysteries with Mr. Bedrick. Hello, Darkside. Hello, Andrew. Hello, Mr. GSV. Hello, Mystery Junkie. Azog. Hi. Hi to Andrew. Hello. Hello to Josh the Posh. Josh the Posh. Hi, Meg. I hope you all have spent a nice weekend. I do. So, we are here today with Ned and Zach. Ned, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing just fine, Jerome. Thank you for having me. Hello to everybody in the chat. I see a lot of familiar names there. I'm Ned Dehan. I'm the host of Black Box Online Radio. And every Monday, I do a segment about the Zodiac Killer on my channel, BBO War. And there will be a new Zodiac Killer news report coming out rather shortly. Maybe about, let's see, in 15 hours on BBO War. So, hello, everybody, once again.
Zach, how are you doing, my friend?
Doing great, man. Just about ready to fire up this blunt and talk Zodiac.
Yeah, for sure. So, I'm going to let Ned introduce the topics of the day, one of the topics of the day. So, Ned, I give you the mic.
Okay, thank you, Jerome. And everybody in the chat, you can put things that you would like discussed on the program in the live chat here. We had one request from Andrew WVA. That's my brother from West Virginia, WVA, of course. And he was asking, let's just get the exact one right here. Ned has been reading James Big Twin's book on Richard Gaikowski. I hope it comes up at least once in the discussion. Now, Andrew did send me a very lengthy email about James Big Twin's book, which is called The Only Time Richard Got Angry at Me. And I've read it in kind of a scanning the text for clues way, but it's very lengthy. So I'll be discussing it on BBO War, Andrew, if you're listening to this live, which appears you are. But James Big Twin wrote this book about his own personal experiences with the Zodiac Killer suspect Richard Gaikowski, and Zach has been reading it too. That's why we thought we could start off with this. And it's not so much just, okay, I was researching the Zodiac Killer mystery. It seems like this guy is matching up. James Big Twin knew Gaikowski personally, and he just decided to look him up on the internet one day, years after they had lost contact, years after Gaikowski had passed away. And he's like, oh my goodness, this guy, Richard Gaikowski, that I knew, he's being accused of being a serial killer. What on earth is going on? So one thing led to another, and James Big Twin did his own investigations. He's actually done a fair amount of research for the book. And that's one of the things, though, that actually impressed me is that he's gone through a lot of newspaper articles. He's gone through a lot of statements from people back in the 1960s and 70s. And again, it's not just a bunch of personal stories, which is what I expected. Instead, he's actually doing a lot of research trying to make points for Gaikowski being the Zodiac Killer. And Zach, about how far are you into the book?
I've only made it mostly 2 or 3 chapters in.
Okay, see, I'm not too far in either, but like, did you have a similar experience that I did when you were looking at the book and your expectations?
Yeah, my expectations were. I read part of Sighting In on the Zodiac Killer before I started reading this, so I kind of had this idea in my head that it was going to be this, in the similar way that Cheney or that Vincent's book is structured, right? Where it's just this kind of like fact-based point form, kind of like really easy to read and really easy to kind of discern facts. But with Twin's book, it's much more of a story. There's much more of a narrative to it. So it's like, okay, I actually have to be, cognitively here and read this and follow this as opposed to, sitting there and scaling facts up against one another, right? Because, but yeah, I mean, I find it compelling. I find it to be one of the better written and like cooler books thus far.
Yes, and I thought that though, like, it really just surprised me that he really had done a lot of research where he is actually trying to find out more and more information, not just saying, all right, well, here's the
Yes.
story. He's
Yeah,
actually going through.
he's not making these logical leaps, and he's not just going, so this is the conclusion that I've made, so this is the next conclusion, and then that's the next conclusion. He does seem to be putting in and work into every single conclusion that he makes. It all seems to be able to be backed up, which is not consistent in the Zodiac world, which is very refreshing.
And Josh the Posh says, what's the title of the book? The Only Time Richard Got Angry at Me by James Big Twin. That's what we've been discussing here. And Tom Voigt did respond to something on Black Box Online Radio when he stated that there are errors in the book. I think he called it poorly researched was the first thing that he said about it. And to Tom's credit, he knows a lot more about the Zodiac Killer mystery than I do. He can tell you that when the last issue of the Good Times newspaper where Richard Gaikowski worked was printed just off the top of his head. And yes, okay, he does know more than I do, and he can call out these types of errors. But as somebody who is just following the Zodiac Killer case, the Zodiac Killer news, and of course new Zodiac Killer books, I'm having a good experience with it so far.
Yeah, that's the thing about Tom's criticisms is like, and now again, I don't know enough about the case either, so I can't say who's right or who's wrong. But it's reminiscent of regular internet arguments to me, where somebody makes a good point and then another person wants to correct the other person's grammar, as if that doesn't affect the point that was made, right? So a lot of Tom Voigt's criticisms seem to be in semantics. I'm not really sure whether or not it affects the validity of Big Twin's story.
Well, say, for example, if somebody got the date wrong about the final issue of the Good Times newspaper being printed, does that really affect whether or not Richard Gaikowski was the Zodiac Killer? I mean, I would say
I don't
no.
think it does either, unless there's some other fact that, like, he referenced some date in the information and that means something that was wrong. I mean, no, I don't think that weakens his case by any means.
Now, there were some interesting things, though, about, like, he talks about how Richard Gaikowski was actually not writing very frequently in the Good Times newspaper in 1970 and 71. And it's like after the Zodiac Killer's persona is going on hiatus in 1971, Gaik all of a sudden starts writing more frequently. Or even if it's a couple months later, it's just like becoming more composed. So that was also an interesting detail. But that stuff is nowhere near on the same level as DNA, fingerprints, palm prints, just discovering Zodiac Killer artifacts. It's a fascinating mental exercise.
For sure it is, yeah. So thus far, that book is basically just laying out a case for Gaikowski, but there doesn't seem to be anything that is contributing to how compelling of a case it is against Gaikowski. I mean, there's nothing that I've seen that's thus far that supersedes his name being in the cipher, or some of the Blaine commentary or other such Zodiacs.
Now, this might be a statement that a lot of people will not like too much, and I don't mean to speak ill of the dead, but I was not impressed by Blaine at all. I mean, rest in peace. But I've encountered a lot of similar narratives from people when they're like, oh yeah, I knew somebody back in the day and I think they were the Zodiac Killer. And the way that Blaine composed his suspect profile for Gaikowski was what I found to be a rambling mess. And I've talked to a lot of people who also have these rambling messes of discombobulated information that they're trying to stitch together about how Mr. So-and-so was the Zodiac. And it's relying heavily on anecdotal evidence. It is relying heavily on their interpretations of this person's personality, which are very, well, it's biased. They're coming at it from only their point of view. But, it's like, I really just didn't see anything that showed me that, okay, wow, Blaine is a very insightful individual.
Yeah, and that tends to sully all the information leading forward against Gaikowski, right? Like, the only reason that the guy's on anybody's radar to begin with is because of these Blaine guys' comments and these so-called recordings. And I mean, I'm not sure if they're all that damning. Those, to me, any journalist in the San Francisco area, whether you're fringy or mainstream or not, is going to be interested in the ongoing crimes of the Zodiac, right? So if Gaikowski is writing about the Zodiac, he's probably gaining some sort of a interest that far supersedes his professional interests, just like Graysmith did. I always saw him as kind of a world Graysmith, just another journalist that got obsessed with Zodiac, that probably didn't have all the resources or the vision to bring it out into some big book that's going to come out in the 80s and make him $1 million or whatever. But at the end of the day, he was just a journalist obsessed with current San Francisco Bay Area news. So, like, I mean, it would be hard not to want to talk about the Zodiac and be obsessed with this guy.
Sure. And I would still love to read Blaine's book, which, as I understand, is unpublished, Goldcatcher in the Zodiac. And Michael Butterfield has apparently read a portion of it, but Blaine was saying that he was working on a 1,000-page book, which is called Goldcatcher in the Zodiac, that was supposed to be released in multiple volumes. I would love to hear it all.
But then aren't also the recordings being held back as well?
Recordings of Geik's voice?
Yeah, aren't there some 10 hours of tape recorded of Gaikowski talking about the Zodiac?
Oh, yes,
and
there's
snippets have
something
been
like
released, and somebody owns that, has copyrighted it or something like that. It's, I mean, it all sounds so fantastical, man. Like I fully agree that Gaikowski sounds like an interesting suspect based on a few pieces of evidence, but I think it really falls apart after a while for me.
And yes, Zodiac Killer Halloween card says Blaine was pushing Geik as a Zodiac suspect back in the 1980s to the police or anyone who would listen. Absolutely, yes.
We have that 89 show where they talk about it, right? That's the Mystery Quest, is it not?
Was that Mystery Quest or Crimes of the Century or?
Oh, the Century. Sorry, I got him. Confused.
So, but we should also point out that if they do want to hear audio recordings, there are audio recordings of Geik's voice on YouTube. I mean, that's not exactly what you were asking about. But we also had something else we were going to discuss, right, Jerome, about the question of why did the Zodiac Killer stop?
Yeah, what the Zodiac Killer did stop to kill, and did he really stop to kill? Because that's something for now we don't know. We can assume that he has stopped to kill after Paul Stein, but I don't know. What's your opinion or your thought about that?
First, so Zach, you ready to move on to this point?
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely am.
You want to take it first
on it, or
no, all you.
Well, I mean, I don't want to stand on a hill, and I'm not on any hill as to why Zodiac sucks. So I don't have a strong opinion. However, I do have many, I think, plausible theories as to why. Not the best way to approach this, but, as your listeners and most people in the Zodiac community know, we're familiar with my opinion. I'm a pretty big believer of Ralph Spinelli. I think his story dovetails pretty well with how I feel the Zodiac crimes would have carried out, how I feel that they would have been carried out in this chaotic fashion, and someone trying to figure out how they're supposed to get something out of these actions that they're committing along the way. So, when I look at guys, other serial killers like BTK or Golden State Killer, whatever you want to call them, or other guys, they all seem to have something else going on in life that distracts them from this other thing that's happening, that, they have these like separate lives. But when you take a look at guys like Sam, for whatever reason, I feel is the closest comparable to Zodiac to me. For somebody who was caught. I there's a lot of similarities there, especially in how the crimes get committed. And so I really don't believe Zodiac had this big plan to begin with, right? And I've gone through this before. I think it unfolded very chaotically. I think he most likely thought that, he's got some sort of issues with women. I can't remember how Sam described his thing, but he had a self-diagnosed mental health issue with women or whatever that he famously had coined. But I believe Zodiac probably had something similar. And I think that as he committed murders, wrote letters, and found himself being titillated or being excited by certain aspects of the crime, maybe more so by the communications as opposed to the murders themselves, so on and so forth. The crime seemed to be escalating and then de-escalating. So, I mean, I'm of the opinion that those the communications are the actual end all and be all to his motivation. So to finally get to why I think he stopped, I really like the idea of what Ralph Spinelli said. I think that Zodiac would have committed a bunch of crimes. He doesn't know what to do with this amount of effort that he has now put forward into the world. He's created all of these lines of communications with police and media. And how do you monetize this? How do you turn this into something that can actually benefit your life? And I like the idea of him turning into a hitman, going to any low-level crime syndicate that you were aware of in your small town because you're that much of a fucking stupid. They didn't even really understand how crime works. So, I mean, I really think that the most plausible theory as to why Zodiac stopped is exactly that. He stopped because there was no reason to continue.
Well, that's really interesting, though, but we have to have one follow-up to that. When do you think the final Zodiac murder was?
I definitely think it was Paul Stein.
As of now, I do too. I think that the final Zodiac murder was the murder of Paul Stein, but I'm about 70% on board with the Zodiac being the murderer of Don Lass. That's not 100%, whereas 100% I believe he murdered Paul Stein. And I think I could be persuaded very easily that the Zodiac did indeed murder Donald Lass. We would just need some type of connecting variables, and that would go against a lot of the things that I've said about the Zodiac Killer in the past, like the Zodiac didn't abduct victims, the Zodiac didn't transport their bodies, the Zodiac didn't leave people in Placer County out in the mountains, and so on. So with the murder of Donna Lass, there are a lot of differences. But the question is, why did the Zodiac Killer stop? There are a couple different viewpoints that we have talked about in the past. One of them comes from the psychological profiler Richard Walter, whom Micro Deli loves to just praise to no end because his thinking is in line with Micro Deli's thinking. And Richard Walter stated that the Zodiac Killer was a power-assertive serial killer. He's not doing this for sexual motivations. He's doing this to prove that he has the ability to dominate his victims, to be in control the whole time. And the Zodiac Killer walked past two police officers after the murder of Paul Stein, Officers Falk and Zelms. And he had proven to himself that he could commit murder. He had proven to himself that he could do this without getting caught. So the thrill is gone. He no longer needs to demonstrate that to anyone. That is what is just showing that there's no real motive to continue the murders, because he's already done everything in terms of mental satisfaction. Now, that's one thing. The second thing is a lot of people believe that the Zodiac Killer stopped committing the crimes because he came too close to getting caught after the Stein murder. And it's just stuff that I talk about on BBO all the time. You guys might hear me say the term heightened predatory instincts. Serial killers have heightened predatory instincts to the point where he's saying, whoa, if I do this again, I'm most likely going to get caught. I'm getting riskier and riskier with my crimes. I might get captured. So I'm going to focus on writing the letters, which I think are safer. You brought up the Golden State Killer. Excellent point. Excellent point. The Golden State Killer was kind of getting older, decline in testosterone, less aggressive, less capable. So then what does he do? He stops killing for a while until stressors entered into his life. Having children. 1981 and 86, right?
Yep.
Something like that.
And for this kind of person, what is the next step after killing, let's say?
That's exactly it. There is no next step. I don't think that there was a plan, right? So once one murder's committed, okay, now we're going to write these letters. Now I like making phone calls. Okay. Well, the first murder takes place, nothing happened. Second murder takes place, he starts making phone calls. Next murder takes place, he starts writing letters, so on and so forth. So the communications are what escalating. The crimes aren't really escalating. They seem to be kind of wavering up and down in terms of propensity and violence. But I do feel that if somebody is just like aimlessly, like most of these killers are who aren't sexually motivated, they're going out and just killing somebody and walking away from the scene. There has to be a moment in time, and I believe Son of Sam talks about it pretty heavily, where you start to wonder what's for, right? And what motivating factors are there. Now, it feels good at the beginning when you're getting all of this press and all of this stuff, but you still have to get up and go to a job that still have to fulfill whatever family routine or neighborly duties that you might have, and this person's trying to get away with pretending to be a normal person in life. So I just feel as though at a certain point in time, you start to see how this doesn't benefit you in any way, and you just don't even have the time to be able to commit the crimes, let alone write these letters. And beyond that, I mean, if we get into the Arthur Leigh Allen discussion, Arthur Leigh Allen once he started to get on the police's radar. I mean, it's not shocking why murders would stop.
Very possible. I guess the only point that I would express in terms of disagreement would be that there was no plan. And I think, though, if the Zodiac committed his final murder with Paul Stein, the plan would be to write letters, to continue the persona, because the Zodiac is very active for 12 months plus after the murder of Paul Stein. Very active with letters. That's where we see 3 Zodiac Killer ciphers, not to mention the pieces of Paul Stein's bloody shirt, threats to target school children, the bus bomb, all of these things. So I think that the next step for the Zodiac would be to create the image of terror for the San Francisco Bay Area, which he was already doing. But he's escalating the image of terror, going from saying, I'm going to go on a kill rampage, to I'm going to detonate a bomb. I'm going to target school children. No one is going to be safe from the big bad Zodiac.
And you will never be out. You are. Yeah.
Sort of stuff like that. So that would just be one thing. But as you brought up the Son of Sam, though, Zach, and this is a little bit interpretive, but, Manny Grossman is our guy for all things Son of Sam, and he points out that David Berkowitz got arrested because of a parking ticket that he received. Yeah. But what Manny said, so clearly, and he does a good breakdown of this, is that Berkowitz wanted to get arrested. He pretty much knew that he was going to get caught because of that parking ticket. So with somebody like that, they're kind of just done with their life. It's called societal suicide, where they don't want to continue their life in society. They want to just, the mass shooters do this all the time, like James Holmes or Nicholas Cruz. They commit the shooting because they want to get arrested, because they hate living in the external world, so they just want to put themselves in prison. And with Berkowitz, it could be similar, but with the Zodiac, we certainly don't have to see something that bold.
No. Berkowitz wasn't a nihilist, though. Berkowitz, he was, I don't think he wanted to be caught. He knew he had made mistakes, but I don't think he wanted to be caught. As far as, you might know about that, but I've never heard him say that.
Well, it's like I said, that was Manny's interpretation of it. It's not like we can just go into somebody's mind or something like that. And
the thing is that if Zodiac lived in New York, I think he would have been caught again, because of the density of the places that they're committing the crimes, right? They're committing very similar crimes out in the middle of the night, even if it's the middle of the day, whatever. They're going up and shooting people, walking away. They're not raping them. They're not taking away pieces. In the one case, Zodiac takes the piece of Paul Stein's shirt, but I think overall they're very similar crimes. They're the most comparable in the way of serial killers, especially in the way that they talk police and write letters.
And I might agree with that. What you have with the Zodiac and the Son of Sam is that you have a 3-way relationship that has been created among the killer, the media, and the police. Because the Zodiac is writing letters to the media, but he's talking about the police. The police are trying to catch the killer, and it all just goes in this circular.
Son of Sam did the same thing.
Yes, that's exactly it. They both had that commonality, and even more so than, well, I guess Jack the Ripper did too, but the Ripper is on a very different level, because the Son of Sam is committing crimes by firearm. The Zodiac commits crimes by firearm, and what we don't see with the Zodiac or the Son of Sam are the excessive mutilations that are done to the victims with the Ripper. So,
but BTK and GSK could be considered far more comparable, because they're in the home for long periods of times. They're doing things with the bodies, and there's much more of a torture aspect to it, right? They're trying to torture the victims. While with Son of Sam and Z, the society is their victim.
Well,
in their head, of course, they smaller victim, but.
Well, like with the Golden State Killer and BTK, they're very sexual, very sexually motivated. There's a reason why, all of these, how many people did the Golden State Killer rape? Over 50. These are sexually motivated crimes, and those would be expected to continue longer and longer. Whereas if somebody is doing this to be power assertive, just to prove that he can be in control of things, maybe Richard Walter was onto something. Maybe he actually did prove to himself that, all right, I can commit crimes. I can even walk in front of the police officers and not get caught. Well, where do I go from here? You know what? I'm not even going to murder people anymore. Oh, and Richard Grinnell of ZodiacCiphers.com says this very clearly, very eloquently. The Zodiac may have just decided that he already had the media looking at him. He already had society looking at him. He had everybody in the Bay Area looking at him. So he doesn't need to do any more physical crimes. He can just write the letters because they're already reading his letters at this point.
Yeah.
And Richard might be on
And
to
what if
something.
he had? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
You do.
And yeah, those two things can be happening at once, right? He's writing these letters. He's not considering the future. He's having a great time. And within that period, his health is deteriorating. He gets arrested. He does these things, and then I saw in the chat somebody said BTK stopped due to age. BTK stopped due to his life circumstances. He actually planned on continuing killing. He was actually ramping up to do another one when they busted him. So I don't necessarily age is the reason why BTK stopped.
Okay, though, and Jerome, looks like we actually have a lot of things in the chat. Would you want to pull up some of these here?
Yeah, for
And
sure.
we can- we can look at some of these things here. But might be something to this about how when a crime is not completely done with a sexual reason, then that's just a weaker factor. But wait, can you go back to that first one, Jerome? It said my thoughts have gone in that direction often. Oh, they're talking to Zodiac Killer Halloween card. I thought you guys were talking to us or something. All right, you're having too much fun in the chat, though. Keep doing what you're doing. You're good. BTK resurfaces as an older man and just toys with cops without any murders. Well, we could also say that the Zodiac Killer resurfaced as an older man and was just toying with everybody. As a case in point, look at the 1974 Exorcist letter when he's just like, okay, I'm just writing this taunting letter. By the way, if I don't see this note in your paper, I will do something nasty, which I'm capable of. So, the Zodiac could have done that as well.
And BTK never planned on writing letters or doing any of those things to begin with, right? He wanted to commit the crimes. He wanted to be a serial killer, and then those communications and becoming a secondary addiction to him. And then even beyond that, as time went by, as people would come out with books, or there would be really popular publications, he would then resurface and want to correct the narratives. So I think it really shows that over time, and as these guys age, sure, their perpetuity to commit crimes might diminish, but not to communicate, not to be in the public eye.
And we just have one thing here from Meg in the chat that I have to respond to. It says, "Whoa, Ned, don't talk again in that voice. It freaked me out." Boom.
Yeah, in my opinion, for
he always sounds like that.
I love when
coffee
say
kicking in.
Goodbye.
Oh yeah,
I love it. I drive around all day. I'm like BBOR online radio.
Coming to you from West Virginia.
I really found though my voice sounds differently even when I just say BBOR. It just automatically goes into that mode, almost like muscular memory.
Yeah,
well, in my opinion about Stein, I think it was his last victim just by one factor. It's the fact that in the Z340, Zodiac claims that he has enough of slaves for his afterlife. So, and like the cipher was not deciphered, I think he continued to play with the media and people, and he can say what he wants because nobody had figured out what he was talking about in the cipher. So I think he was, I think he tell the truth in the cipher when he say, I have enough slave for my afterlife. And that's why I think Paul Stein was his last victim. But the Zodiac have seen that nobody had figured out the cipher, the 340, I think that he had continued to claim other victims to make him bigger, to make him stronger.
Yeah. In the vein of why he stopped, it's difficult for me to believe that he would have transformed into some other crazy serial killer and got a new name and did this new stuff and would have never connected the two or attempted to connect the two through communication. I mean, it just seems very off-brand.
Yeah. For example,
go ahead, Jerome.
became the Uni Bomber, for example.
Well, let's just point out, though, that the Unabomber is perhaps a very clear example of a sexually motivated serial killer who's not making physical contact with the victims. And the Unabomber continued onward for way longer than the Zodiac did. Although he killed fewer people, the Unabomber only killed 3 people and 23 were injured. But and I do cite Mark Hewitt for a lot of this. What he talked about is Ted Kaczynski would spend 100 hours trying to make a bomb that would only take 9 hours to make, where he is just assembling and disassembling the bomb, doing it over and over again. And the FBI determined that he was doing that because it was giving him some type of sexual thrill out of making these bombs. And another interesting thing about the Zodiac Unabomber connection is the Unabomber also did not act extremely frequently. He has these very large gaps in his activities, the same way the Zodiac had gaps in his activities. But ultimately, I do think they were different people. I don't really think Ted Kaczynski matches a lot of the witness descriptions.
No.
And I mean, yes, I mean, he might
witness
have
descriptions from the Unabomber case.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely, he matches those. I mean, but like from the Zodiac case, the Zodiac's composite sketch, I think has very different facial features. He has a very wide nose, whereas the Zodiac's composite sketch has a very thin, narrow nose. And I mean, I'm just like, I don't even know if Ted Kaczynski was murdering anybody in 1969.
No, I can appreciate why in the early days why people would have said like, oh, maybe the Unabomber and Zodiac are the same person. Obviously, with what we know now, I find it's a ridiculous assertion.
Okay, Kaczynski has similar handwriting. He was somebody who may have had the brain to create this type of serial killer persona. But here's another odd thing. Is this the kind of guy that's going to tie people up at Lake Berryessa and stab them when he can't even touch the victims in the Unabomber thing? Like
he's also living off fucking berries in the woods. He's like not big and bulky and like weird. I understand.
Absolutely, absolutely. So
makes no sense.
There are definitely some strikes, but I have so much trouble accepting this stuff about how the Zodiac just morphed into another serial killer as well. Yet he's not going to leave behind any recognizable clue. At least Kaczynski had a similar symbol. You know, his FC symbol versus the Zodiac symbol. I think that those are very similar. But like with the Golden State Killer or BTK, they get accused of being the Zodiac. But where are all the Zodiac signatures in their crimes? If anything, BTK was acting like... Right, they're acting like different types of serial killers.
GSK was Zodiac. Sorry, there was a little bit of a delay there. I don't mean to interrupt you.
Okay.
I have such a hard time believing that Golden State Killer wouldn't have raped or tried to rape or done something sexual with one of them, of one of the 5 victims.
Especially Cecilia.
Well, exactly, and he had all the time in the world to do it, for sure.
I mean, if she's tied up, completely hog-tied, in a defenseless state, I have so many problems trying to connect some type of sexually motivated serial killer who actually assaulted the victims.
The things that this man did, man, is so deplorably gross. Like, Golden State Killer and BTK are 2 people that just stand above in terms of absolute monsters of humans. Like, I don't even like... It's pretty interested in like salacious details of serial killer stuff. I hate that clip of Dennis Rader talking about all the things that he did and seeing how joy he's getting out of discussing the details and facts in front of everybody. Like, I really find it to be uncomfortable and fucked up. And with guys of that type of with those types of urges, I don't see them shooting a couple in the dark and walking away. I just don't. There's too much there. You guys talk about Factor X and these things building in them and stuff, and it's just not there.
We actually have
I'm sorry that a lot of these crimes are still sexually motivated, even though that there's no sexual contact. Son of Sam even said that same thing. He said he felt a sexual release as he was pulling the trigger and shooting people on the street, right? So I do believe that Zodiac had that. I do believe that basically all murderous crimes are sexually motivated in some way, whether or not it's motivated from their past childhood traumas or whatever. This is a retaliatory action that's happening in society. So I completely agree with you.
Oh yes, and Zach, also excuse me if I wasn't meaning to interrupt you. As you said, there is a delay, but this comment from Josh the Posh is really interesting. Are there examples of serial killers who have morphed from one serial killer identity into another? Well, Josh, I can give you countless examples of theorized ones and hypothetical ones of so-and-so who's been accused of being the Zodiac Killer. How about the Monster of Florence, the Italian serial killer who first started committing crimes in 1968? It
1968.
was on hiatus all the way to 1974, and the Zodiac is operating from 1968 to 74. Yes, absolutely, there are theorized ones. We've already mentioned the Uni Bomber, BTK, the Golden State Killer. I mean, you could even say things about the Manson family being accused of that.
Yep.
I mean, if you say, serial killers. I mean, that's where we have the Zodiac Manson connection by Howard Davis. Bill Nelson also supported that theory. And, it just goes on, and it really becomes shocking. And, Sam Fisher even talks about how Joseph Paul Franklin was accused of being the racist killer and the Zodiac. Now, here's something, though, to truly try and answer your question. I think that some serial killers have really drastically altered the way in which they commit the crimes. And Joseph Paul Franklin, the racist killer, would be an example of that. Because as John Douglas openly stated in his book, The Killer's Shadow, as well as in the promotional materials, he was the kind of person that would target anybody if he felt that he had a reason. Men, women, children. He even shot Larry Flint because he thought he was a race traitor for putting black people in Hustler magazine. So there are serial killers out there who will differentiate and deviate from their MOs. And that definitely takes place.
Well, that's like the Alpha Killer, right? Too, or whatever, the ABC Killer.
Is that the one who was targeting the people with the double initials?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, but he had. Okay, I thought he had made some MO switches and changes as well within there, and trying to throw off police.
I've heard like one podcast on that, so I'm really not an expert on that case.
But GSK is probably the only one that I can think of that has a multiple moniker killer, right? Even though he wasn't trying to go and label himself and give himself those brands, he is the only one that I'm aware that moved place to place and developed a persona or an identity.
You mean like how he starts out as the Visalia ransacker, then becomes the East Area rapist, original Night Stalker?
Yeah, and then becomes the original Night Stalker, and then and I don't really count the Golden State Killer in that because it's a post name dubbed by McNamara, but yeah, I mean, he's got to be the most prolific in the way of if serial killers are brands and it's companies about rebranding and continuing their success, then he's got to be up there.
But Zach, I think this is a perfect example because you're talking about how he changes the way that he commits the crimes. He's morphing into a different type of criminal. Perfect example. He starts out by being the ransacker, doing the burglaries. He becomes a sex offender and a rapist, and then he ultimately goes on to murder at least 13 people, maybe more.
The question is, they're not intended to do that, right? Because you could make the argument that it's just an escalation of crimes, but you could also make the argument that he's aware of this and change the MO. He moves and saying, okay, this is an opportunity for me to now to further extreme my crimes in this area and maybe not be tied to previous. Because he hasn't talked, it's really difficult to say. That's why I like talking about Dennis Rader and Sam Berkowitz a lot, because they've said so much.
Yes, but I do think that it's very, very clear and apparent that he's committing multiple types of crimes over the years. There are changes in his behavior. There are escalations in the physical violence. And that's not what I think Zodiac, who was it? Josh the Posh was saying about that. That stuff I think is very present.
And I think it's twofold in the way that clearly sexually motivated and doing insane things that I can't even imagine to people. But also at the same time, clearly taking joy in the amount of fear that he's spreading throughout the community. Right, there's multiple examples as to why, as to him taking advantage of particular situations to you're distracting the hell out of me.
Sorry, somebody was just asking me something here offline.
No, it's so funny. Just you go. There's multiple examples of GSK, taking specific opportunities to to further instill fear in the community, to yes commit crimes that he wants to commit, but also doing them to further instill and create this like monster image that he's moving forward with.
Okay, though, now we have a follow-up to Josh's question, who says, but differing MOs is quite a different thing than changing serial killer identities, right? Or now that I think of it, self-proclaimed identities are rare. Are they common? They're very rare. I mean, they happen a lot more than we think. All right, but Josh, here's an example of one. The Zodiac Killer, maybe, right? If you accept that the Count Marco letter from 1974 is authentic, the Zodiac starts calling himself the Red Phantom, red with rage. And as Ray Grant points out, that means he's actually calling himself the Phantom, because when he says red with rage, that means I am the Phantom and I am red with rage. I completely agree with that. But yes, he's saying that he's the Red Phantom. And I'm not completely convinced that that's a Zodiac letter, but I think it's quite possible. That's one of the strongest unconfirmed communications. And are there others? There must be some other examples when the Zodiac Killer has tried to do something like that, where he's trying to present himself in a different way. I mean, even adding the hooded costume at Lake Berryessa should be an example of that, because he goes from murdering without the hooded costume to now wearing this very elaborate executioner's hood. Not just a ski mask to disguise his face. He's reshaped his serial killer persona. But I think Josh was really asking about something like going from the Zodiac to becoming the Red Phantom.
Do you think that the Zodiac was known by a mental institute or by a mental hospital?
Yeah.
Do I think that the Zodiac Killer was institutionalized at a mental hospital?
Yeah.
Oh, this is actually interesting, Jerome, because everybody knows on Black Box Online Radio, I also do a segment about D.B. Cooper every Friday, Friday. And I recently interviewed Jude Morrow, the author of Dan Cooper, and he asked me a Zodiac question on the show. And I said, I'm going to save you some time. When someone asks me a Zodiac question, the answer is, I don't know. If I can give the most honest answer. There is a little bit of evidence that suggests the Zodiac could have been in a mental hospital. The gap from 1971 to 1973, that might be where he's at. And one person who talked about this a lot was Michael Cole, author of the Zodiac Revisited trilogy, when he actually thought the Zodiac was institutionalized in a mental hospital and the treatment actually worked, and that's why he stopped killing. So we should bring that into this discussion. And the YouTuber Jimmy Akin did a very big presentation on Michael Cole's observations, and he contacted some psychologists. And that was one of the few times when I was just like, I'm not a psychologist, but I absolutely disagree with everything I heard in that presentation. And, but it's possible, and it's a defendable claim all the same.
Yeah.
I would say another solid reason why Zodiac was in a mental hospital is because the top suspect was in a mental hospital. That's a really good reason.
Yeah.
And Gaikowski and Ross Sullivan.
Yeah.
And
but to think that it worked is so funny. Like, to think that like somebody went into a mental hospital and it worked, and like, but he didn't go to the mental hospital for being the Zodiac. He would have gone into a mental hospital for being something else, and somehow he got treated for something else, and then he wasn't the Zodiac after. Like, it just seems so like, what?
Well, the things that I disagreed with Jimmy Akin's presentation on were about how he contacted some psychologist and he phrased his questions in a very weird way. And more or less, they were just saying that, oh, the Zodiac was most likely a clinical psychopath. Therefore, the treatment most likely would not have worked. And I mean, I'll just tell you flat out, there are YouTube channels that explore this subject. And that's the only thing they explore. You can watch them for themselves. You can watch interviews with clinical psychopaths. And frequently, they say the treatment worked. In fact, all of the interviews that I watch are with clinical psychopaths who say, yeah, I'm a psychopath. I'm not curable, but I've been through the process of treatment, and now I realize I shouldn't hurt people. It's doable. It's possible. And that was just conflating treatable with curable. And
these are killers.
Oh, but there is a point to that, because one guy just said this so clearly. He's clinical psychopath, antisocial personality disorder. He said, I'm no different than a serial killer. The only reason why I don't do that is because I don't have homicidal thoughts and urges. I never have. I most likely never will. But if I were
homicidal
to
tendencies are different from being a psychopath.
Right. That's what he's saying. He doesn't have homicidal tendencies, but he has the same emotional responses as a serial killer. There's just for some reason, for the chain of events in his life have not driven him to that. So you do have people.
Yeah, exactly. It's a mixture of ingredients for sure that creates a killer, right? Psychopath is something that you can be born as, but I don't think you're born a killer. I think you need a few added ingredients for sure. Just want to say I agree very much with Meg and her comment about I think Zodiac was very intelligent as well. I do think he was deficient, but I do think he was intelligent. He was above average. He was obviously able to conceptualize narratives, topics, and concepts, and even carry them out and be a pretty capable guy. But he had to have deficiencies in his life for whatever reason. I know a lot of smart people that don't succeed for whatever reason. I mean, I know a lot of people that do that don't turn into killers, but whatever reason, his ingredient list was a violent one.
And intelligence is so different for different kinds of people, and exactly. Some people are smart and they don't succeed. Completely right. There are also people who are very smart, but they just lack initiative. Some people are very smart. It's just they choose like lower level things in life because it makes them feel good.
Some people are very smart and they're pedophiles. Some people are super smart, but they're the president of the United States. Some people are dumb and they're the president of the United States. Some people are, right? Intelligence scales, right? Critical thinking is a different type of intelligence than being able to regurgitate information, right? So him being like, I do think Zodiac was a smart guy. I just think he was probably a difficult to get along with guy. I think he was probably pretty weird. And yeah, I mean, we all know that intelligence, the biggest aspect of life that's going to make you succeed. Most likely social skills are, right? And if anything, I think Zodiac lacks social skills.
Now, Meg has a very good comment here. Maybe similarity to Bryan Kohberger. Bryan Kohberger is, of course, the suspect in the Idaho quadruple homicide. And I think there are going to be more differences than similarities with Bryan Kohberger if he did indeed commit those murders.
I see him as a Bundy.
Yes, I was actually thinking that too. He's similar to Bundy. The biggest difference that I find is that we don't completely know what happened, but Bryan Kohberger may have targeted one or more of the victims in the house, and he did this because he was attracted to their physical appearances, and he stalked them. He followed them closely on social media, particularly Instagram, and then he invaded the house, and that was perhaps done because he felt like he was unable to have some type of sexual relationship with either Magnum or Gonsalves.
And it shows so much organization, and it shows so much. It shows so much acting on impulse, right?
But wait. I mean, we're going to talk about, though, is Bryan Kohberger a smart person? Clearly, he wrote brilliant criminology papers. I've heard readings of them online, but he ordered the murder weapon from Amazon. Yeah. He even purchased, the black mask he was wearing at Dick's Sporting Goods. I mean,
and Amazon, that's what I'm saying, bro. Ted Bundy wasn't smart either. The only reason that he got away with it is because the cops were dumb, or people weren't putting things together like that. He wasn't successful in his crime because he was breaking the mold by any means. It's because he was moving around and doing things in this chaotic fashion that happened to meet the standards of that away with the crimes. But like Bryan Kohberger, I see is very similar. Just because he can write a brilliant criminology paper, he knows what people want to hear. He knows how to succeed in education to make him an intelligent, organized person. Ted Bundy was the same way, right? When he got darker into his phases of killing, he fell into disrepair. He wasn't cleaning himself. He started to fall. He started to fall off, right? So I think what we're just seeing is a modern day version of Ted Bundy, where they have less ability to be able to harm animals and have these escalating crimes throughout life because of forensics and all these other ways that we stop people before those crimes get committed. And we're just seeing it happen in one large precipice boom.
Yeah.
Okay, though. Firstly, Meg wants to offer one correction to the things I said. She said Bryan Kohberger wasn't following them on any social media. That was a fake account, but he was studying criminal psychology, or it was he thought he could get away with it. Yes, absolutely. Because
Sorry,
a
I
lot
thought
of
he
his.
was following them on social media. Can we clear that up? I understand he was following.
I mean, I did too, because I thought that like he was practically stalking them on Instagram. She says that was a fake account, though. I mean, I don't.
But it's a
I
burner
don't-
account, right? That's like people do that.
But here's another thing, though. Meg also says, but he wasn't arguing with the people he was killing. I believe though that the Zodiac Killer might have done some similar things to Bryan Kohberger in this regard, like about choosing a female victim that he's attracted to, and he is stalking her, looking into her. So a lot of people think it's Darlene Ferrin. I think there's a much stronger case that Cecilia Shepard could have been the targeted victim because she's killed by knife. She's tied up. He's wearing the hooded costume. He's hiding his face in case she might recognize him. For the longest time, that was my go-to theory. And that sounds quite similar to the activities of Bryan Kohberger, if he did indeed do what people said he did, that he went to a restaurant where Maddie Mogan was a server, and he became enamored with her appearance and then started tracking her down. Or it might have been Kaylee Gonsalves was the girl, because she
I don't
resembled
really
someone.
subscribe to any of the theories that Zodiac
Say
had
what?
any targeted victims. I was just saying I don't really subscribe to the idea that Zodiac had any targeted victims.
Okay, so like I said, that was my go-to theory for a while, but as I told you guys, I don't know. I had to ultimately step back and say insufficient evidence to say that the Zodiac actually knew Cecilia Shepard. It's just something I can consider, maybe, but it's like just because he committed the crime by knife does not mean he actually knew Cecilia. Just because he's wearing the mask, that does not mean he knew Cecilia. It's just one interpretation of the evidence.
No, I think he was wearing the mask, and Lake Berryessa was so different because of experimentation. I think Z got a lot of kicks out of these letters, these phone calls, and this fear that he was spreading throughout society. I think he liked killing to some extent, and he wanted to see what made him feel better and what didn't. I mean, I hear a lot of serial killers after they're talking about that, right? When they're in a moment trying to kill someone and they start experimenting if they have the time to do it, and they can't really explain why. Their Factor X or whatever you want to call it is driving to do things. So I think it's fairly reasonable to say, like, okay, he shoots his first two set of victims, just shooting them, decides to have it be a little into the next one, says, okay, this isn't exactly what I wanted out of it. I like to fear more, and just decides to go back to shooting because it's much easier. I leave less evidence. It's that simple.
All right, so we have two things, though, in the chat. Firstly, Meg offers the clarity when she says, no, it was like as soon as Bryan Kohberger was arrested, people made fake accounts. One of them followed the girls. Jennifer Coffin and Affer saw it and reposted it, although it was clearly not real. Okay, so she said that was determined to have been a fake account after the arrest. I mean, I'll take your word for it, Meg. Of course, I'm not an expert on Bryan Kohberger. But Josh has a good question, though, that I think we can answer. Didn't Cecilia actually see his face, even if far away? I would think she would recognize him at a distance if she knew him. Yeah. I couldn't. And Zach, do you remember, is it 50 feet or 50 yards when she said, like...
50 yards. So it was like about 150 feet.
I couldn't do that. Like, even if I saw Zach here or Jerome here from 50 yards away, I wouldn't be able to just be like...
And she said to Harlow, or I can't remember the cop that stayed with her before she expired. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but... She said to him that she wouldn't have been able to recognize him, but she did see his face, but not enough detail to recognize it. She had said that.
That's exactly what she said. No discernible features were recognized.
Yeah.
Like she was not.
She said that she saw his brown hair through the eyeballs. Any descriptive features came from him being right there in front of her, stabbing her, not from far away.
Now, some people have very good vision. I do give them credit for that. Maybe they can recognize, someone they do personally from 50 yards away. I could only do it if they had an extremely, extremely unique appearance. Like, I knew this person recently who was just, extremely tall, extremely skinny, and had bright red hair. Maybe I would have been able to recognize her from 50 yards away. But that's just because of a very unique appearance.
Yeah, and but you're also comparing against, you said you've seen me or Jerome. You've seen our faces before you know who we are. Oh, that's Zach, or that looks like him, or his body type, or this. This is just some... Like, you don't know who anything is or whatever. You're not, even if you did see something like eyebrows or whatever, your brain is filling in those gaps because you're not actually seeing the information. It's just too far away, man. There's no one It's just not
No, I
real.
agree.
And
It's too far
again,
away.
it's not really worth the debate. She said, I did not see any discernible features.
Right. I was just pointing out that I wouldn't even be able to recognize people if I did know what you guys look like. And
Yeah, no, straight, yeah.
okay, yeah, so we're on the same page. Sure.
I have a question about the first attack. Why do you think Zodiac asked David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen to exit the car? Did he? Did he
I'm not
ask
convinced that he did.
the car, or
I'm not
because
convinced he did.
they were outside the car when the police arrived, so there were no shoot into the car. That's for sure.
Right, but Faraday was found just outside of the vehicle, and she was how far away, Betty Lou?
Well,
Running?
she's running away several feet. I
Yeah,
forget the
several
exact number.
I don't
maybe-
think I'm not disputing that he didn't order them out of the car. I just don't think it's any more or less logical for me to believe that he shot them both and they had not died right away, had gotten out, so started running. David Faraday gets out, he dies on the pavement. Like, you know, people get the idea in their head that when they get shot, they just die instantly, like the movies, and just keel over. But it takes a long time to bleed. Your muscles work, your brain's pumping and firing cylinders. People, survival mode is a real fucking thing. You know, they're trying to get out and do that, and maybe that's why his kills became more efficient as time on from those ones. But I'm not saying that he didn't. It's just I don't think it's any more or less logical for that to have happened.
So what I think happened is, and this is something that I would defend a lot more highly than what I said about Cecilia's personal connection. With David and Betty Lou, I think that Betty Lou took control and she had flight instincts. Fight or flight. Like, are they going to stay and try to go along with this, or are they going to run? And there's even like a movie called Lover's Lane where it features a Lover's Lane killer approaching couples parked in cars, and the killer approaches the car, and then the female victim says, "We gotta run," and then the male victim follows her out as they run out through the passenger door. But that doesn't mean that they were asked to exit the vehicle. Ultimately, what I think happened is the Zodiac got out of the car at Lake Kermit Road. He fired a warning shot with his .22 caliber firearm, and then he walked around to the driver's side, and then Betty Lou said, "You know, he has a gun, we have to run." Betty Lou runs out the passenger side door. David Faraday follows. The Zodiac easily goes around to the other side and intercepts them. And maybe they're standing, like paralyzed with fear for a second because he's holding them up at gunpoint. He shoots David first. Betty Lou runs again because those are what her instincts are telling her to do, to run. And then Betty Lou is gunned
The time
down.
it takes to fire 3 shots at David, boom, boom, boom. Like, you can get out the car and make it 6-7 feet. But in that amount of time, and then she's still going to move forward a little bit as she's getting shot and getting forward. So, it's not textbook as people make it out to seem.
I mean, but that's the challenge question was like, why did the Zodiac order them out of the car? I don't think he did. I think that the victims did that on their own.
Yeah, I think it's a fight or flight. I think it's a mix of fight or flight and scare and taking a long time to die, then you need to get the fuck out of there.
And this is a risk he don't took on the second attack. He fired directly on Majo and Ferrin. Didn't say anything. He came, he shot.
So maybe in that first crime there was more conversation. Maybe he learned that there was he had to get more to the point, and that's why the next was that much more to the point.
Yeah. That's why I was wondering if there were a kind of conversation before the murder.
That's the thing about Zodiac, is that because he's not sexually motivated, he doesn't have these urges that are going to push him to do these things that are going to go against his game plan. So he has the ability not to learn, but learn unencumbered by sexual urges or other desires that he might have at the time. So and he does show his ability to learn and grow as a killer. So I have no reason to believe that he probably made a few mistakes that left the crime the way it was with David and Betty Lou, and that's why he fortunately made the mistake, and Mike Majo survived that one, depending on whose perspective you want to speak from. but yeah, I would say it's pretty easy to argue that the next one was quicker and cleaner.
Yeah. And
So,
after that, like Berryessa, it's completely different. And after that,
I think,
Paul
like I said, I
Stein,
think that
it's
comes
again
from an
completely different.
experimental state of mind.
Yeah.
but for the longest time, I would have thought more about what you were saying, Jerome, about how I thought the Zodiac did order them out. I thought, the whole thing about the warning shot could be true, but then, he's like, okay, you two out of the car, and that he ordered them to walk around to that side. He ordered them to face the road. He shot David, and maybe he even told Betty Lou to run. Or what a lot of people think, the people who think that he ordered them out of the car like to say that maybe he shot David and she started running, and he just panicked and was just shooting her down with his pencil flashlight. And the reason why they say that is he's like, okay, I thought I was in control, but I almost lost control. Next time, I'm going to just approach the car. I'm not going to order them out, and I'm just going to start shooting.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Speaking of the Lake Berryessa, the switch up in MO at Lake Berryessa, Jerome, do you want to make a point?
Yeah, just one stuff about that. Okay, I'm completely agree about that, but yeah, it's difficult to explain what I have in my mind, but
No,
you see, we don't know if they have talked at the first attack or not. We don't know that. For the second attack, we are sure that he shot directly on Darlene Ferrin and Mike Majo. On Lake Berryessa, it's again different. And for Paul Stein, it comes back like at the first attack, just one bullet in the head. So I don't know. There is something I cannot get. There is something I cannot understand there.
Okay, now this is
there's
actually a
for sure
challenge
difference.
that was raised by Tom Voigt when he said, why did the Zodiac Killer shoot David Faraday once in the head, execution style, yet when he approaches Mike Mageau, he shot him multiple times and didn't even make sure that he was dead, when he knew very clearly you can put a gun to the back of someone's head and it'd be more likely to kill them. That's what I think you were coming at, Jerome, with about he shoots David Faraday execution style to the back of the head, and Paul Stein is, of course, shot on the side of the head by the right ear. Got to be clear about that one always. And why is that? I mean, it could be just that he was an unpredictable serial killer. To everybody who has Richard Gaikowski as their suspect, they're just going to say, well, he was an abnormal, schizophrenic drug user. He was a weird person who changed things up. Arthur Leigh Allen was a weird person who changed things up. A lot of these Zodiac Killer suspects are weird people who change things up. And that's never really sat too well with me. I mean, it could be. It could also just be that, he's not really paying attention too much to murdering the victims. He's just doing this so he can create the Zodiac Killer persona, put that into action, and get people to be afraid of him.
Isn't it also easy to believe for the second murder, like he just didn't, like that something spoiled his aim. He wasn't able to. It's not. I mean, it doesn't seem that aged for me to believe that, like, oh, they were flailing around or freaked out. David Faraday stood there and was a little bit more stone cold and got caught in the moment, while Mike Mageau wasn't. I mean, is that difficult to believe?
No, it could be something like that. It could just be the terrain of the land. Maybe it was easier for him to walk to the passenger side of the car.
It's just all about the Occam's razor of the situation, right? Like, I often think that the most logical is the answer, and when two things seem just as logical as the other, yet don't lead to opposite conclusions, like, right?
Yes, but it really is somewhat unknown, though. Like Fire Pixie does say, though, if my car were getting shot up, I would run. Okay, some people are going to have those flight instincts.
But some people wouldn't. Some people wouldn't, right? Just speaking of which, you said, and I wanted to bring this up before, just to bring back the conversation a little bit, I got 2 points. Richard Gaikowski, him being a diagnosed schizophrenic, is one of the biggest points against him being schizophrenic.
Okay.
Um,
I mostly agree, but
I'm not sure how much experience you guys have with schizophrenia. Like I have some fairly fairly close experience with it in my family, and I have such a hard time believing a person of that mental state at that time, where people are severely unmedicated, is going to keep a secret such as that of being the Zodiac. Schizophrenics are severely disorganized people. They don't remember, they don't bathe, they don't remember anything that's in there. Now, again, these or unmedicated schizophrenics can lead to very hostile lifestyles. A person who shows the amount of organization that Zodiac has seems to be far more delusioned than they are schizophrenic.
You know, Zach, it's really interesting that you say that because, I mean, I've dealt with schizophrenia a lot in terms of research and reading literature about it. Not so much with interacting with people, other than the ones who follow my show and like to write me very twisted emails with mangled language. But as far as this goes, we do have some very high-functioning schizophrenics. As a case in point, Ted Kaczynski. And it's possible that David...
Sorry, but what about Ted Kaczynski's high functioning?
No, that he didn't demonstrate like the things you said about not remembering things, and he wrote the manifesto that is not necessarily mangled language, and it doesn't have the same type of disoriented thinking. And
well, it shows obsession, right? So Ted Kaczynski was a schizophrenic, but he was obsessed with what he was obsessed with, and that wasn't going to get, even though there were a lot of contradictions and crazy narratives in the things that he was saying as well that I think are very compelling, as a schizophrenic would say. There's a lot about his life that is very disorganized. He doesn't take care of himself. He lives in the woods and forages and has limited interactions with humans. Like these are basic components to what humans need to be the best versions of themselves that he deprived himself of. And I'm not trying to say that every schizophrenic is the same, and obviously I have a ton of empathy for schizophrenics and those who have to. It's a wildly crazy thing to navigate when your loved one's schizophrenic. I'm just saying that a person of Zodiac's nature, I have a really difficult time believing in terms of what he created and could be a schizophrenic, especially an unmedicated.
I definitely do agree with you. I guess the disagreement we would have is that I would call Ted Kaczynski a high-functioning schizophrenic because it doesn't appear that his mental illness was disorienting his thinking to the point where he was just completely mentally disabled, where it's just he's completely inhabilitated because of his schizophrenia.
Well, I'll tell you a story of a schizophrenic story that I'm aware of, where a guy walked from, I think it was like St. Louis to California or something, because he had heard voices coming from that direction or whatever. And as he was walking, he was going through, and he was surviving off dog food, things left on people's porches and whatnot. This is sometime in the late 90s, early 2000s. And after he was medicated and apprehended for his crimes, he was able to tell us what was happening in his brain. And while he was walking through a residential neighborhood, he heard voices of a little girl being, raped and hurt by groups of people inside of his home. And voices in his head told him that the way for him to save this girl is by burning the house down. And that way, all of the guys will have to run out of the house to save themselves, and then he can get out and then go and get the girl. But in the wake of that, he killed an entire family, and so the point that I try and illustrate with that story is that they are obsessed with their goal of what they want, of whatever they've decided narrative means the most to them. And that being Ted Kaczynski with his manifesto and what he wants to create. But every other aspect of life falls apart. Everything else falls apart other than what they are obsessed with. Now, there might be some scaling to that in the way of how it ripples out, and there might be a few things that they care about. But I promise you, somebody, an unmedicated schizophrenic person who is just, I have it. Ted Kaczynski is. in my opinion, low functioning. I'm sorry to go off on a tirade about it. I feel very passionate about schizophrenia specifically.
No, and I think what you said about the story about burning the house down, it's kind of relating to a discussion I had recently on BBO War when I was just telling the story of how someone relayed their own psychotic experiences on YouTube, and what he said is that psychosis is like a blend of mangled language. It's a blend of bizarre thinking, hallucinations, and ideas and imagination. It's all of those things put together. And to anybody else, it would be incoherent and it would make no sense at all. But to the person experiencing the psychosis, it just makes perfect sense. As a case in point, what you just said, oh, I have to burn the house down to get them out of the building, and then I'll have access to helping the person.
But a point that I may not have driven home far enough is that they don't mean to do evil. They think they're doing good. They want. It's not all rooted in evil, right? And it's and that's the difference between a psychopathic with homicidal tendencies and schizophrenic. And when we start to compare those things, and I don't like it. So Ross Sullivan, Richard Gaikowski, all these people are schizophrenic, and people use that as some sort of a piece of anecdotal evidence against their guilt of being a murderer. It's just like few schizophrenics murder, very few.
Now, we might be able to encapsulate our discussion entirely in one sentence that came to us from Michael Cole when he said, I asked him the question when I interviewed him, do you think the Zodiac Killer was a schizophrenic? And he said, no, because if he were, he most likely wouldn't have been able to do what the Zodiac did. And would you agree or disagree with that?
I agree.
I would agree with that. I think
I mostly do too.
Yeah. It's really nuanced, but I agree. Yeah.
Oh, of course. That's why we've been having this discussion, though. But I'll ask you another one, Zach, though. Do you think David Berkowitz was a schizophrenic? Because there are conflicting reports about his mental health.
No, I don't. And the story that I believe and know is that the dog is not real. Like that was all for him trying to get away with an insanity defense.
Yeah.
And, you mean hearing messages from the dog?
Yeah, and the whole thing, you know what I mean? He came clean later on. He wanted to kill people. He felt sexually deficient. He was mad at young women and young men being able to carry out sexual relationships and normal relationships, and he wasn't. And for some reason, I don't know much about his family history, but I think like a doctor and mother, all that. The ingredients matched up. He wrote the letters. He did the shit.
Now, I will say,
but I don't think he was a schizophrenic. No.
Berkowitz's letters are way more mangled than the Zodiac Killer's letters. The Zodiac appears to have.
So he may have been going through levels of psychosis, which I think is called. There are types of bipolar and types that go through levels of psychosis. I can't remember. That actually affects people's handwritings and way of thinking, and it's much more short term than because schizophrenia will be this thing that builds and grows, and you'll see it right over time. But Berkowitz could have had some bipolar called borderline personality syndrome, psychosis, mixture, something happens. Who knows? Maybe it's some acid. I don't know.
Now, it's my understanding, and some people who know more about the Son of Sam case than I do can weigh in the chat if they have something they want to clarify. But it's that at one point, Berkowitz was diagnosed as a schizophrenic, but his first original diagnosis was malingering with psychopathic tendencies, meaning they thought that he was faking it. Yeah. And no, I don't believe that he actually received any messages from the dog. And one thing that he even wanted to talk about when he was actually asked about, his experiences with Harvey the dog was that he never actually claimed he heard the dog talking to him or heard the voice of the dog. But again, to Manny Grossman's credit, he did point out, though, that David Berkowitz did really seem to be bothered by very loud noises to the point where it was a medical condition. I don't remember the exact word, dysphonia, macrophonia, or something like that. But that part could have been true, that the dog is
easily agitated, right?
And he's extremely agitated by the dog barking, and that's not.
Which I think Golden State, right? That was one of the biggest things that they heard from neighbors. The only thing that his neighbors knew of him was that they yelled at dogs and hated loud noises and nuisances on the block.
Yeah, so like that doesn't mean though that like he is psychotic though, but I think what you meant about Berkowitz is that he may have had a psychotic disorder, but that doesn't mean that he was a schizophrenic.
Yeah,
No.
and I think, especially considering, I mean, he would have kept on going and doing it if he had never gotten caught. And so it feels as though it's tough to say, right? Like when people get caught in the height of their crimes, I think it's really difficult to diagnose them or figure out because they're immediately getting medicated, or probably getting misdiagnosed and mismedicated just to make the situation easier in prison for them. Regardless of the era that we're in at the time, where so much ignorance, regardless of how much good intention people want to have. So yeah, I just don't know. And the whole schizophrenia thing is really hard for me.
Yes, and like I've said this like very clearly about Ross Sullivan in my old episodes, because Ross Sullivan was arrested for indecent exposure because he was running around naked and he trapped a man in a phone booth. Never mind that he was 6'2" and 300 pounds, and that must have been a terrifying experience, no matter whom you were, to be trapped in a phone booth by this giant naked Ross Sullivan, and that's
disorganized.
Very. And the Zodiac does seem that he is mostly organized. He seemed like someone who is aware of his mind, and I don't believe the Zodiac believed any of this stuff about slaves in the afterlife. When I die, I'll be reborn in paradise. I think he made the whole thing up. I think he was.
That's all plausible deniability to be able to put for an insanity defense if he's ever caught.
Yeah, yes, I've heard that one too.
And also to build a narrative and be scary.
And to be scary is really what I think he was trying to do. So it's like I'm
but
dark.
Like two things can be true at once, right?
Yeah.
Oh yes. I mean, like, absolutely, he could have also been trying to build the insanity defense, but I think he also wanted to treat himself like a character, and just like, this is my persona that I've created. I am going to kill people to get slaves for the afterlife, and I'm going to paradise.
And they want to be that person, and we see that so much nowadays with like social media influencing and people who build up this like brand or idea around themselves, and then people get to that and they'll just like continue pushing whatever this thing was that got them this bit of attention beforehand because that's what worked in the past, right? So it's like I don't see serial killing and writing letters as any different than that, right? People get boxed in and they go, oh, this works, and I'm gonna do this until the wheels fall off, right? Like, and some people just get bored and delete their Instagram accounts. And I think a serial killer could do that too.
Yeah, very good point. Very good point.
Yep.
Now, I only have one follow-up note, and it's not my own original observation. Going back to Ted Kaczynski, you were talking about how, he had like an obsession, though, with his manifesto and so on. I've had the opportunity to interview Mark Hewitt about 3 times, and he has, Ted Kaczynski as his Zodiac Killer suspect. And I asked him what he thought about that stuff. And he said something to the effect of, his interpretation of Kaczynski is really quite different than just, oh, this smart guy that went crazy. No, he said that he believed that Kaczynski decided from a very early age that he wanted to be a killer, that Ted Kaczynski is almost just pure evil. And I don't like calling people evil in these psychological discussions, but he is someone who developed this homicidal plan very early in life, and then he just waited until the opportune moments to put it into action. And I think that's a very interesting thing to consider. We're not psychics, right? And Kaczynski's dead. I can't ask him. But, I mean, I think it's an interesting interpretation. Fire Pixie saying, nope.
I don't think I've ever seen somebody of 165 IQ be fucking taken in by the CIA and fucked with till the cows come home, change brain, have this insane way of growing up and terrible traumas, and then like this dude's got a recipe nobody's ever seen before. Like he's definitely diagnosed schizophrenic, has some sort of mental disorder. Who knows whether or not he was born out or the CIA gave it to him, or who the fuck knows? Like, poor fucking guy, man. Like, he's one of those hurt people in my opinion, where it's like, I have a very difficult time believing that there's any evidence to suggest that Ted Kaczynski would have ever hurt a fucking fly if it wasn't for circumstances that he was put in.
Well, can you say that again? What is the context in which Ted Kaczynski would not hurt a fly?
Before Ted case, we don't know. Ted Kaczynski has no history of violence as a young person. Right?
Fair enough.
That we know of, no evidence or anything. The only real history, the only real data that we have on it comes from like high school, college, like basic school records and things like that as he enters the elementary school system and things. He's never arrested. He has no things. There's like, what reason do we have? Like every other killer that we see, have propensities to violence in some way, shape, or form. Now, I haven't heard his brother or anybody talk about harming small animals or anything of that nature when it comes to Kaczynski. It's really just comes to the intervention of people going like, holy shit, this guy's smart. Let's fuck him. And then all of a sudden he went to go live in the woods, and then some concoction melting pot happened, and he became who he was. So like, I'm not trying to say that the dude wasn't born. I'm just say that I've yet to see evidence to suggest that he was this like violent dude before there was grown-up intervention. Some man who probably could have given a lot to the world.
You mean that before the experiments that were done by Dr. Henry Murray and their
yeah, no CIA crazy MKUltra shit. Like, I don't know what's real and what's not with that. All I know is that Ted Kaczynski was put in a room and fucked with to no end.
Yeah.
Yes. Like, and for the people in the chat, what he's talking about is, I think it starts, is it 58 or 59 when this is Ted Kaczynski is doing this, where he goes to Harvard at like 15 or 16 as a teenager, and he actually had to have his mother sign the permission slip to be put into this experiment. And what Dr. Henry Murray wanted to do was to study interrogation techniques and how people respond to them, specifically by choosing the students who appeared to be the most alienated. And it's reported that Ted Kaczynski was the most alienated student. And what they would do is they would get like people from the legal backgrounds to challenge somebody's worldview and dismantle it. Everything that you think and believe, they'll just tell you why you're wrong and watch how this person responds. And I mean, I could tell you flat out, I think that would be horribly traumatic.
It's unregulated, fucking widespread trauma and abuse. Like, it is gnarly.
Right, and just to do this
like, it is not something like sorry?
Just to do this on teenagers to see what happens.
It's deplorable. It's so what the American government did to young people, to its own citizens, is fucking deplorable, man. So like the Ted Kaczynski case is so much bigger than that. I don't like him being put. He's like not a fucking serial killer. He's not any of those things. He might have some like he in the context of how brain, like he's not raping people or doing these things, or like he's not motivated in the same way. He doesn't have a childhood that we can go look back on and reverse engineer and figure out when this happened or that happened or anything. It's pretty clear cut. He's fucking the adults came in and fucked with the young man, and then society ate the consequences of it. Like where's the confusion?
Well, you said Ted Kaczynski is not a serial killer in your mind?
No, not in the context of how we like to frame him against other serial killers. So like this, the term serial killer is like very fluid because, you know, they'll say it in a shorter period of time, but then some killers do it over a year period of time, and then they'll still be considered serial killers or whatever. So there's all this fluid, whatever terminology with it. Yeah, he killed multiple people for sure. I absolutely put bomb makers, terrorists aside from serial killers, and that's why I think Zodiac is interesting, because he has this like weird middle ground between domestic terrorism and serial killing. That is a bit of Son of Sam, but is almost like a evolutionary step from it, right? Where there's more fear and there's bombs and there's children being involved, as opposed to just like couples on the streets in New York. So I'm not really sure if there's an inspiration being taken there or anything, but there does seem to be this like evolution in how this like incel domestic terrorist fucking whatever is reaping its way through society. But no, I don't see Kaczynski in any way, and I don't think should be framed in any way, shape, or form like a sexual sadist serial killer. Anything like that. No, I don't agree.
Well, I mean, I do think of Ted Kaczynski as a serial killer, only because I use the definition of committing 3 or more murders with a cooling off period in between and return to normal life, and I definitely think he did that. And I think that Ted Kaczynski is also both a serial killer and a domestic terrorist. Absolutely, he's a domestic terrorist. I mean, the Uni Bomber is practically synonymous with domestic terrorism in the minds of Americans. But Zodiac Killer Halloween card says, didn't they praise them at first, then they tore them down and everything that was wrong with them? Yes, as I understand, like they really want people to just share their worldview. Oh, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And they get them to talk very openly and freely, and then they just try to, as you said, tear them down, find everything that was wrong with what they were thinking.
I don't understand. What are we talking about right now? For 2 years, the Halloween card? What?
No, for 2
No,
years,
for
you mean
2
like the
years,
experiments were
because
conducted
he
by
was-
Dr. Henry Murray. When you said that they fucked with his head,
Oh, yeah.
Fire
For
Pixie
2
says
years.
it went on for 2 years.
Yeah,
Yes,
in the most developmental years of his life.
But Ted Kaczynski had the option to get out of that, and again, according to Mark Hewitt, he chose not to because he just
No, he
said,
chose
"I
not
wouldn't let
to.
them break me."
Yeah, exactly.
Sometimes you have to walk away, people. Just don't allow the abusive cycle to perpetuate.
That's true. That's true. Are you familiar with the new declassified GFK files?
I
hate that
really,
shit.
No.
I really
Okay.
am not.
I think
though.
this is
mean,
all
we'll talk about
clickbait
details.
bullshit, dude. Like, whatever. Trump's just
You
trying
know-
to take over Greenland and get us fucking
I am
distracted reading JFK files.
I,
Oh,
I
I've
am
watched it over
a
Greenland.
really GFK hardcore researcher, and I find something which is, yeah, a little bit interesting. Maybe not, I don't know. During
what's
the time of 1971 and 1984, the CIA has made mind control experiments at 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 Atascadero mental state hospital. So this is
That's crazy,
when,
really?
yeah, this
Maybe the
is when,
CIA knew Arthur Leigh Allen was the Zodiac. They cracked him, and then they fucking, yeah, boom, man. Allen did it.
maybe I don't
just
know.
connect the most ridiculous dot ever.
They were,
I wouldn't put it past them. Think about everything we just said about the Dr. Henry Murray experiments. I mean, there really is no limit
He
to
allowed
human
that shit.
mortality. So if the CIA did find out that Arthur Lee Allen was the Zodiac, and then they just wanted to keep the case unsolved to mess with the public and distort the media campaigns, kind of think of it like Operation Mockingbird and so on, media distortion and all that. And
Bluebird, Artichoke, yeah.
yes, all of these things. And
Paperclip.
Yeah, but they were capable to suppress memory. So let's say if Arthur Lee Allen was the Zodiac, maybe they have suppressed his memory to don't remember what he has done.
aha. So that's why he goes from wearing the Zodiac watch to saying, "I'm not the damn Zodiac."
Yeah.
Why are they accusing
I mean,
me of this? It's
absolutely.
horribly depressing. Because at first he's like, "Whatever, come get me. I'm right here, pigs." And then he's just like, "Why are they
You guys believe
accusing
in like a
me of this?"
Manchurian candidate?
Sort of like that, yeah. Arthur Lee Allen is the Manchurian candidate. What a time to be alive. But it's just that would be the craziest ending to everything here. Just like,
oh man,
Arthur Lee Allen's just a droid for the CIA, and they wiped his memory.
if he's Tom Cruise, yeah, that'd be nuts, dude.
Yeah, I agree with you, Cap. Yeah, it's a.
So to get back on, so either way, everybody knows that how I feel about the schizophrenia thing now and stuff. But I wanted to talk about Lake Berryessa as well to bring it back to where we were at with the MO switch ups. Every opportunity I can, I take every opportunity I can to echo Druzer's opinion on this because he really blew my mind. I thought it was really intelligent and thought maybe a killer would think this way. And the reason that he wore the hood on that day at Lake Berryessa is because he knew it could go either way on, and maybe this person could gain control, kill him, he could get arrested if he died, whatever. He wanted to be able to wear the hood that had the Zodiac symbol on it, so that if he lost his life, he would still be able to take credit for his ingenious ciphers and all these things that he created that were never solved, and he died while committing murder, and he would still be able to get whatever credit he could out of the situation. I thought that was really, really... I guess hard to think of a better word to describe it, but yeah, a really cool way of thinking, and I really it's potentially the way a killer would think. You know, difficult for any of us to put our minds in the heads of like a person who would be trying to carry out these acts, and somebody who's trying to take credit anonymously and would want to have their name live in infamy afterwards, even if they weren't able to live through it, would, I think, do exactly that.
Well, sure. That sounds like that you're saying that the hood was a combination of signature and MO. It has more than one purpose about why he's wearing it. He's trying to conceal his identity, sure, but he's also trying to do this in a signature way to make it very clear that, you know, he's wearing a specifically designed symbol that was chosen for a very specific reason. And I still think, though, that there's this strong possibility that he was wearing it because it had meaning to him. It could also be a reference to the movie Shock Corridor from 1963, where somebody says that it's a this is the cyclos that comes from the Greek kuklos, that it is worn to be invisible. So it's like this again, that's something that purely has meaning to him. I don't think the Zodiac had any delusions to the point where he would think that it actually gives him powers, but I mean, signature and MO put together. And that's a great point from Druzer. I wish he were on the panel right now so he could put it in his own words in case he didn't make it out. Everybody knows.
I hope I did him justice there in terms of, but I heard him say that once and went like, oh, fuck, that's awesome.
And Edward Cyphers is here.
Yeah.
Welcome.
I was going to, somebody said Arthur Leigh Allen rather be known for being the Zodiac than a child essay. And I've always had a problem with that idea. So that goes with the idea that he had to be known for something. But in reality, would he want to be known for Zodiac to the point where it made him famous where more people knew he was a sexual offender? Like, if he didn't take on the Zodiac, couldn't he just talk about it at all and everything just kind of go away and he's not known as that at all?
Well, you see, the problem I have with that is that how long did he spend in Atascadero State Hospital? Was it 4 years? Was it
4 years. 4 years.
4 years, right? If people learned he was the Zodiac Killer, he would be spending a lot more than 3 to 4 years behind bars.
Oh,
he
yeah.
would be definitely going, possibly even to the gas chamber, depending on when he would have been arrested.
But I think the comment is more in regards to like how he's publicly known, not in terms of what he's guilty for.
Then why didn't he confess on his deathbed publicly? If he actually were trying, if he would rather be known
because he
as
got the best
Zodiac
of both worlds.
Prime
He got away with it, and everyone thinks he did it.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
You know, and 9 times out of 10, you got to choose one. Right?
But don't the Seawaters claim that, like, it's not exactly on his deathbed, but about a month before, he confessed over the phone to one of them that he was the Zodiac? Don't they claim that?
Yeah, today.
Yeah, but which is fine. I mean, I don't think he's a liar, and I don't think Arthur is, whether he did it or not, I don't think he's past saying that either.
Oh, no. I mean, I think Arthur Leigh Allen could have jerked people around till the day he died. And
exactly. But like I think he probably at some point in time, okay, live in the world with me where Arthur did it for a second. I think he probably lived for a long time saying he was gonna confess at some point and want to take credit for it. But I think at a certain point in time he goes, well, everybody thinks I did it, yet they can't prove that I did it, so I got away with it. So I got the best of both worlds. Everyone thinks that on one side, everyone thinks that I'm smart, and another side, everyone thinks that I'm innocent. So on either way, I'm a good guy, and no one's talking about how I'm anything else, right? So if he is the killer and is motivated by being known as a killer, he got he got 2 things that no other killer gets.
Yes. No,
and a lot of these guys look at themselves as, you know what I'm saying? So a lot of these guys look at each other and compare themselves against each other. I want this guy, I got away with this, or this guy did this, and whatever. And they all kind of know about each other and aware of their kind of their auras. So like, I just really feel like the serial killer world, if Allen did it, he's the most successful in the way that like he spread his wins across the board better than anybody.
Yeah.
No, I completely follow that, and maybe that is what happened. Though I mean, we're just I don't.
That's
we
maybe why nobody figure out.
Well, I
straight.
mean,
If I was sitting there, if people always say, "Why didn't he confess on his death?" I'd be like, "He didn't have to." It's awesome if it's him, right? Like if no one thought it was him, then sure, wants to. That's the last bit of credit that he can get out of the situation, right? If he did do it and he was caught, then he did do it and he was caught, and he's going to live in that reality now. But yeah, he's the most successful of all time, and that's what makes him.
Well,
the
challenge question was, wouldn't he want to be known for being the Zodiac instead of being a sex offender? But if he doesn't make the deathbed confession, he is already a known, proven sex offender, so he'll be remembered as a sex offender and not being remembered as the Zodiac. He'll only be remembered as a suspect in the Zodiac case.
True.
Sorry, say that again?
The challenge question was, wouldn't he rather be known as the Zodiac than a sex offender? But if he didn't confess, then he's definitely known as a sex offender, primarily remembered as a sex offender, and he's not remembered as the Zodiac, just as a suspect.
No, but but if he's known as a suspect and he continues to perpetuate the rumor that he's a suspect, that means more people know his name and are looking into his history and finding out that he is guilty of sexual assault. Like that doesn't make sense to me.
Well, I mean, we know
that doesn't. The two can't be reconciled. And where if he doesn't want to be known as a molester of kids, then why would he try and make himself more famous, where people are going to then look into background publicly available information?
You're saying you don't agree with that?
Well, I don't think it's a. I'm confused by the question in the way of like, why would Arthur have to choose between what he's known for?
Oh, yes, I was just taking the question very, very literally. I mean, of course, human behavior something like that.
I mean, of course, you'd want to be known as Zodiac more than a sexual molester, for sure. Yeah. More than, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, but in the practical way of asking the question and how it pertains to the case and his profile, I don't see how it makes sense.
Well, I mean, if he were to confess on his deathbed, yeah, I was the Zodiac, then he's definitely going to be remembered more for being the Zodiac than being a sex offender. This way, he's remembered quite a lot for being a sex offender.
But if he says to the world, "I'm the Zodiac Killer," he's then, as famous as he is today, his name, he's then more famous, right?
Yes.
So more people know that he is a sex offender then. So he's become more famous. But then, so if we take into account the Zodiac's profile, which is somebody who clearly wanted to be smarter than the police, wanted to get away with the crime. If he's sitting there later in life and considering confessing on his deathbed, in the position that he's in, where he is basically the guy and everyone thinks he's the guy, however, he's outsmarted the police, and he even has statements that I think lend to this in the way that they can't prove a damn thing, not the damn Zodiac. It sounds so egotistical to me. I really feel like he stumbled this way of living in both worlds, and I think he was happy to do so. I think he's happier to be known as a Zodiac suspect and have the sex offense be a side thing than him be the Zodiac and have this entire part of the entire world know his life inside and out. Because right now his life is only known inside and out to Zodiac sleuths, but not to the entire world. They don't know everything about him like they know about Ted Bundy. They don't know everything about him like they know Dennis Rader and all these other guys.
Fair enough. I mean, perhaps we can move on, though, because we have a couple comments from Captain Jenks who said, if Arthur Leigh Allen was so smart, he wouldn't be living in a basement. Well, you know, it's...
He had an IQ of 165 and lived in a fucking house in the woods. What are you talking about? What does it matter?
I'd rather have the house in the woods than the basement, to be honest, but...
No, or lived in a fucking... But yeah, I'm just saying, like, being smart doesn't mean you have a penthouse suite in Vegas or anything like that. A lot of being smart, that you're bigger than society.
Being smart also does not dictate your life choices for some of the reasons we went over earlier. People can choose to... not exactly underperform, they can choose to make certain choices that are pleasing to them, even if they are not traditionally what other people would expect them to do. And there was a really interesting comment on Radio Reddit when someone just said, like, it's actually 165 IQ as well. This person saying, I've taken multiple IQ tests where I've scored exactly at a 165 IQ, yet I don't perform well in school. I don't really have like a very good career. And that person just came to the conclusion that taking IQ tests must be its ability in itself. Like they can figure out these things. If you do X task, how many times will it take? Like you can figure out the answers on an IQ test, but he didn't have a lot of real world practical applications for it. I think that guy was extremely self-aware and very honest, and I commend him for being so honest. But the next comment from Captain Jenks I wanted to talk about. Oh, actually, we can do Dr. Casbah first. Zodiac is one of the most wanted people in America, for sure. Jeff Allen was Zodiac. The police and the government would have already had him in custody and charged them. Now, Jeff Allen, Dr. Casbah, as I understand, your Zodiac killer suspect was named Bill McReynolds, right? And who's Jeff Allen? But Captain Jenks says, my theory is that the Zodiac is my theory is Zodiac's family is wealthy, and his family owned the car dealerships, and he was the black sheep in the family. Captain Jenks, by chance is your suspect Shel Cavalli? I mean, of course, I would say more than owning dealerships. Shel Cavalli was a very big importer of automobiles, the biggest one for Volkswagen on the West Coast, right? He is, of course, the suspect of Mike
He's walking his dog, right?
Now, according to Shel Cavalli, he was in England at the time, but as Mike Rodelli pointed out, when he was asked for an alibi, he said, I should have been in England at the time. So Mike Rodelli saying, no, he didn't say he was in England. He said, I should have been in England, meaning that he was in San Francisco. I'm not even convinced Shel Cavalli was walking his dog at the time.
But that's who I'm thinking of the right suspect, though, right?
Yes. Now, someone brought up
the only reason he was ever put on the radar to begin with was because he was walking the dog.
And you could also say that he would come on the radar anyway, you know, some guy who does resemble the composite a little bit, some guy who is in the vicinity, has a direct connection to one of the crime scene locations. But somebody brought up an interesting
challenge. Somebody who lives near the crime scene who looks like the sketch is evidence, bro. That the entire world looked like the sketch.
They would come on the radar. They would come on the radar. I didn't say there were good reasons to put them on the radar.
But what puts him above any other person living in the Presidio that had glasses thin with the crew cut, outside of the fact that he was walking his dog close to the time?
Oh, probably not a whole lot. But John Parr Cox got accused of being the Zodiac for the same reason, because he lived nearby and he wears.
Man, if I was out walking my dog, I'd be like, "Fuck, man, this shit." Knowing this case so much makes me just like, if I'm out walking my dog, I ain't helping no one.
And let's be clear, those are not strong points of evidence, but people do.
But it's the whole reason. It's the whole reason that they ever even became worthy of looking at, and then the entire Venn diagram becomes questionable because starting from concrete, you're starting from clouds. And then you're just like looking for ways to tie back in this person to this nebulous, ambiguous information. Like, I don't know.
Absolutely. But I was genuinely asking Captain Jenks, and Captain Jenks says Zodiac sketch doesn't look like someone heavy set. Not at all.
But I want to say that Tosh himself said, and Armstrong on many occasions said that they had zero faith in that sketch being accurate, and it would never it would never disqualify a suspect.
I mean, of course. I mean, like, you know, Zach, you know this better than anyone. I completely agree with that. But as far as Shel Cavalli goes, I think that he is a very odd suspect to have because he was so wealthy and so prominent, and the whole challenge that someone had was like, what kind of risk would this guy be taking if he's going to commit murder in his own neighborhood when he is a famous, high-profile businessman, you know, who could be recognized so easily by walking or past his neighbors? I mean, the amount of idiocy.
This dude's more likely to like get an agent to beat him up on the weekends to get his shit off if he was a psychopath and write letters to kill people and stuff. Like, it's just not there. And like, I think, Ned, you agree with me. The profile on the Zodiac is that he's like a wannabe. He's not somebody that was successful in life. I don't see somebody doing these types of things who felt any degree of success in the other levels of life, whether it be relationships, socially, career-wise, anything. So, yeah.
Mostly I agree, but I'm always willing to listen to new persons of interest who don't match that description, who perhaps were educated
Yeah.
and accomplished and had, successful relationships. I will hear people out. But the point with Shilkavale, as well as John Park Cox, is they would be just taking such a large risk of being recognized. And I don't like this thought process of, oh, well, the last time the Zodiac was seen was at Presidio Heights, therefore he had to have gone into one of the houses. No. We don't know that that's what the Zodiac did. We don't know that the Zodiac walked home. The Zodiac could have had a vehicle stationed by. He could have had a getaway plan in the
I would
park.
say we know he had a vehicle stationed by. I would go as far as saying that we know that.
But he could have gotten in the vehicle rather quickly, or he could have hid in the park, like you said, and the dogs didn't come within 2 blocks of him or whatnot. He could have done it that way. He could have taken the vehicle right across the bridge into Sausalito. I particularly like that angle. And just this whole thing about how he had to have gone in a house, that to me is just saying, all right, you're going to the limits of your knowledge, just like this screen right here. And then once you get to the limits of your knowledge, you're just like, okay, well, that must be what happened because that's the last place where he was seen. No.
Well, it's just wild to me. A killer would do that, right? Would go, oh, I'm gonna go and. It just seems like a crazy plan to have, and for somebody as organized and knew what they were doing as much as they were, it just doesn't seem like their MO or what to do. It seems crazy.
No, too much risk.
Yeah, I think it's really easy. I would go as far as saying that he parked his car there earlier in the day. At some point in time, made his way into the Presidio, hailed down cabs, probably rode more than one cab that day, potentially. Didn't like the scenarios, got out, went back. I mean, I have a hard time believing he walked San Francisco, being as crazy and hilly as it is, for that amount of time. So I would think that the Zodiac spent time in cabs or public transportation earlier that day. And I always wondered if the investigation went that deep into looking into other weird or strange cab fares throughout the day, or even in the weeks leading up or days leading up, who knows, right? But I mean, again, I'm a believer in Ralph Spinelli's story, so I think that he went there that weekend. So I don't think the weeks leading up probably you would have found anything suspicious, but that day or maybe even the day previous for sure.
But Zach, do you believe the Zodiac when he said that he was hiding in the park and the dogs didn't come within 2 blocks of him? The police should not have been doing their road races with the motorcycles. They should have been searching the park.
I believe him. I tend to, at least, because there seems to be this like interesting excitement about that information for him, and it's almost as plain like Game of Simon Says for a long time, right? Where it's I don't really believe anything that he says unless he proves it. But when he gets into these like highly detailed situations that reflect positively on him as an opposer to the police, and he has this opportunity to really like embellish it and make them feel stupid about it. Now, I don't dispute that it could be embellished, but I do tend to believe the framework of the story.
So when I said that, I thought I said the list of the possibilities of the Zodiac.
Just to expand on that, I'm so sorry. So I just want to expand on that, and I further believe that the story is true because of the police's reaction to that information. I do believe that in a lot of ways they were embarrassed of how they covered that, how they built that scene and everything in those early hours before that they knew it was Zodiac, mind you. But the police's motivations to cover that up or make themselves a little bit better and figure things out in the wake of that crime also make me tend to believe that Zodiac is on the right side of history with that one.
And to be clear, when we were talking about the possibility of the Zodiac having a vehicle nearby, yes, I think he had one too. But I meant, did he immediately get into the vehicle as soon as he's out of sight? Or did he actually hide in the park, like he said? And
that's what I think. I think he hid in the park and then probably got in the car and found his way out later or whatever. Yes, but I believe the hiding in the park, to be more specific. Sorry if I didn't answer so direct.
No, I just wanted to show the reason why I was asking the question. But one of the most frustrating parts of this case is that we never know when the Zodiac is telling the truth or not. It seems like he had a tendency to lie, and he's saying, you're going to find his identity in the fighter. Sometimes we know when he's telling the truth. Other times he could be just blatantly lying.
Right, but when he proves it, we know he's telling it.
Yeah.
Well, when he murdered Paul Stein and mailed in pieces of the bloody shirt, yeah, that's proof. I mean,
Yeah. Or when he gives us detailed information about crime scenes, he's telling the
stuff like that, yes, but like when he says, "You've stumbled upon my Riverside activity," was there actually any
but that's not
Riverside
it.
activity?
That's what I mean about the says thing. Like that fits his narrative to be able to say, "Oh yeah, I'm capable of this other crazy, vicious crime that's already unsolved. That already I know has nothing to do with me." So if they do solve that person, they're going to find that it has no connection to the Zodiac in any way whatsoever. And then they're just going to find out that I am this evil genius that threw red herrings out there for them to be able to waste their time. Like, it fits his need to do that, right? Regardless
Well,
of
that's exactly the
truth.
point. That's exactly the point. He could be throwing out red herrings at countless times, and one of them could be that he was hiding in the park. And a lot of people have disputed that. Some people have their own theories, and I mean, well, I've just brought up two people, like Mike Rodelli and Adam Ivester, who have Shel Cavalli and John Parr Cox as their suspects, respectively. They dispute that, but I certainly disagree. So yeah, but I mean, that's all I meant. He had the ability to throw in red herrings whenever he wanted.
For sure,
Yeah.
it's I guess what I'm attributing value to it, regardless of like so we know it's true and we know what's could be true. Those are the two categories that will live under with Zodiac. But most of the time, when we're in the could be true, it doesn't really matter, right? I don't think it splits the case in any direction, but I think for the most part he's telling the truth with what he's an embellisher by nature, right? And I think that's what the profile of Zodiac speaks to, is that like he's not working off of fundamental like he's got some foundation to what he's saying, but he makes himself seem a lot more bigger and stronger than he actually is.
I'll even go
And
a
he's
step
smart enough
further.
to know what that means, and I think that's an important point to keep in mind. Is that some people don't have the intelligent level to be able to see the step above them, and he definitely sees that step above him. He's smart enough to see a few steps ahead of him. He's just for whatever reason incapable of reaching those levels, whether it be socially, whatever.
I'll go a step further and beyond embellisher. I'll state that the Zodiac Killer was a sociopathic liar. Doesn't mean he's a clinical sociopath. Sociopathic liar, spinning a web of lies and deception to manipulate or for his own benefit. And I definitely think that there are going to be those types of elements in there.
So,
And
challenge question: do you believe that every troll on the internet is a sociopathic liar?
no,
So every person on the internet that's portraying someone that is not their own, that might make people feel so yes, they're not killing people or doing those things, but that makes them a liar, a sociopathic liar.
no, because there are different types of liars. They could be a pathological liar, where it's almost like they have a disease that is practically making them do this, where they're lying for things that don't even benefit them. And you just said any troll on the internet. Well, if someone is a troll,
yeah,
that doesn't mean that they're immediately trying to spin a web of lies or deceptions that just to manipulate other people. They could be doing this for some other type of reason, mostly to agitate as opposed to manipulate.
So yeah, what? Okay, so we agree. So what makes Zodiac different from that?
I absolutely think that he was trying to deceive people, to manipulate them, making them afraid of the bus bomb. I mean, and this is theoretical because it's not like I know what the Zodiac actually did. I don't think there was a bus bomb. I don't really think that he murdered Sherry Joe Bates in Riverside. I mean, I don't think that he had a plan to actually kill school children. I think he was telling those as lies, and he's spinning this web of lies to terrorize the Bay Area.
Right.
Purely my interpretation of the evidence. But the bigger things I'm talking about that I can demonstrate to you is that, he said that you're going to get his identity in the 408 cipher. No. You're going to solve the 340 cipher, and these are clues to his identity. Nope, nothing in there about his identity. Those things are I'll call them, those are blatant lies that he created.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. There's a lot of lies within the letters for sure. I was more, my challenge question back to you with the liar was more of like whether or not he was a liar by nature. Do you think he was a liar in real life?
Absolutely, I think he was a liar in real life. And yeah, that would stem back to sociopathic lying, spinning the web of lies and deceptions to manipulate. Sure.
Because there are
And
people
like,
who lie for like really odd reasons, right? Like pathological liars who are just lying, and you know they're lying. Sometimes you can't figure out how they don't know that you know that they're lying and things, and that's, you know, and it's really disorganized and weird. But then there are liars like so I guess I'm trying to break down the exact bracket of liar that Zodiac would fall under, because he doesn't come off as that type of a liar to me where like, it doesn't make sense. He seems to be good at lying, or it seems to have this like this overarching you know, it's this narcissistic manipulative lying that's moving forward, trying to push his narrative and his desires forward, as opposed to it just being like pathological, like he can't control it, you know?
Okay, well, I did a recent breakdown on Zodiac Monday about this. We can go right now. You want to talk about the different types of liars? We have white liars who are lying for perhaps...
Oh, I remember you did this now. I remember. Yeah. Go on, yeah.
The white liars are lying for perhaps a good reason, or they're trying to protect someone. Then we have the compulsive liars. And the compulsive liars are trying to maintain the balance and maintain an agreeable nature. They're telling somebody what they want to hear so they don't create a bigger conflict. I don't think the Zodiac did either one of those things. Pathological lying would be when someone is doing this because there's no real benefit to them. It's almost like they can't stop. Pathology, like going back to a disease, they just can't stop. And we have other terms that are very loose, like habitual liar and chronic liar, just doing it frequently and regularly. And then sociopathic lying would be spinning a web of lies and deceptions to manipulate. So I don't think the Zodiac fits into any of the first four. I think what he is doing, his was about, is sociopathic lying.
So do you think so, because it's not a compulsion, do you think that he would have been a liar in his everyday life, or do you think he would have been an honest guy?
Absolutely, I think he would have been a liar. The Zodiac has certain sociopathic tendencies, but he definitely has narcissistic tendencies. I think that he would have been the type of person who is just going to be lying and deceiving because he thought he was better than people, smarter than people. He can make this stuff up just to be in control of things. And a lot of people with sociopathic tendencies turn to manipulation as a way to get their rocks off.
Yeah. We have a lot of question.
Oh yes, great one from Josh the Posh. There are multiple types of intelligence. You can be intelligent in one, yet lack emotional intelligence.
Oh, yeah.
Completely. There's
I
even
would
things
say
like
most they almost scale against each other. Like the smarter that you get, IQ-wise, almost the more socially incapable you become for a lot of people.
I knew someone once that had a very high IQ, but also a very high sense of social awareness. One of the worst people I've ever met. No joke.
Yeah.
I mean...
Here we have Dr. Casbah. I think Bill McReynolds, first time I heard this name, was the Zodiac. And I think his father, with the same name, was a police officer in California during the time of the Black Dahlia.
Bill McReynolds is a suspect in the murder of Jean-Benet Ramsey. And you can hear more about that on my Tuesday show, when I'm going to be talking about Jean-Benet and the book Perfect Murder, Perfect Town, and a lot of other sources. But yes, and Casbah does think that those cases are related.
Okay.
But Casbah, your name is Dr. Casbah now, and what did you get your doctorate in? Just curious. I mean, only because you only recently updated your name. Genuinely asking. Oh, and Zodiac Archive Project has a good one, saying criminal intelligence. Some people have very strong criminal intelligence. You know who didn't? Bryan Kohberger, the criminology student, for all the reasons that we listed off, you know, about like buying the knife on Amazon. And as Pat Brown said, people are calling this guy smart, yet he left behind the knife sheath at the crime scene. And no.
Well, it's a great example of just being like, sure, he's able to regurgitate information in an interesting way in school. Like his intelligence fits with the educational system, but there's a lot of people who are smart. Street smarts is different than book smart. There's all these, and then some people are good at both. Some people aren't good at either. You know, there's the attribute scale, just like a creative player on NBA Jam, to everybody. You know, when it comes to their intelligence levels.
Right, and there are also interpersonal intelligences where someone learns from other people. There's intrapersonal intelligence where people learn
And
by
there's
being
motivation,
self-reflective.
right?
What?
Motivation is a big one as well. Like, you know, it's are people motivated to learn a particular way to do this? So, you know, it all scales.
Do you think the Texarkana Phantom could be the Zodiac?
Anything's possible.
No.
Highly improbable, but anything's possible.
Oh yeah,
I'm
for
going to
sure.
go out on a limb and say no.
Unlikely. So Casbah here says Zodiac targeted
Because he was a
Paul.
cab driver.
One
right.
reason.
One reason? I don't know about that. Do you think that Paul Stein was targeted for one reason? Some people state that there are multiple reasons. It's about the location, lining up the points on the map with the radians. And I think that Zach is already going to be leaning this way when he's saying that it was done because he wanted to murder a taxi driver and he just wanted to get him alone, do something different, changing up the MO and fooling people.
And go to a quiet area where there would be a low-level police response.
Oh, well, thank you, Dr. Casbah. Ned is right. He's a scare tactic. His mouth is bigger than his punch. Bingo. That hit the nail on the head. That's what I think the Zodiac was about.
Yeah. The Zodiac was lying when he said that he was killing. He had to kill.
That's a problem with Gaikowski being a suspect too, man. That like because isn't that Gaikowski was so close to Paul Stein that for some reason is compelling.
I just think the problems with Gaikowski relate to profiling. I completely admit that he was somebody who was pretty far out, but I just think a lot of the things, despite everything I said, about, schizophrenia before, I think that's a big strike against a Zodiac suspect.
I think to be far out. For the Times newspaper, he wasn't far out. Like he wasn't like this weird guy that was like fringy. He was like happy to be a fringy guy. He wore that like a cape, He wanted to be a part of good times and do all this crazy shit, right? Like, does Zodiac really seem like somebody who was happy to be on the fringes of society in a public fashion? It seems like, exactly. Like, it seems exactly.
The Zodiac seems like someone who perhaps didn't have the strongest outlets for his internalized rage, and that seems like someone.
He didn't have anybody. He didn't have anybody to fuck, dude. That's what's the problem, man. I think that these I really think it comes down to that, man. I really think that we'd see a lot more Zodiac killers out there nowadays if it wasn't for the internet and social media. And we'd see more with social media if it wasn't harder for people to be caught. I think we'd see more, man. I think the epidemic of this incel weird males that are mad at the world because they can't figure out how to get laid and shit. That's the recipe of Zodiac, Son of Sam, all those guys right there. Not just Kay and Dennis Raiders, because they figured out how to get married and figure out society, like the Ridgeways and whatever of the world. But the Son of Sams, the Arthur Leigh Allens or whatever Zodiacs of the world, I truly believe are the opposite.
Okay, though, Zach, does that mean that you are mostly ruling out suspects that were married?
Yeah, for sure.
So, what do you think about a suspect like Don?
I wouldn't. It's not. Oh, I don't think Don Chaney did it at all. I think you have to believe so much to think that Chaney did it, man. You have to such logical leaps. I've read Beeson's book, and as compelling as it may sound in some ways, man, obviously the distance traveled is really, really hard to make sense of, to commit these crimes and get back and do that. The geographical logistics of it makes it really hard. But even beyond that, to believe Chaney's story, you have to believe that it was this plan, this book that was written before it all got carried out, and it all got carried out in this perfect fashion, exactly how he expected it to, and then he was able to pin it on Allen in this last piece. It just feels like a Spielberg movie, man. It's great in the way that it follows, and it's fun and interesting, but to put stock in it, you have to really think that Chaney's a fucking genius, and I just don't think that regardless of how smart he may not have been, I don't think that the world unfolds in that way. It goes against my world beliefs in the way that people have these plans, they get carried out in this way. Like, I mean, I'm a businessman by nature. I don't really have a very stable life. I'm constantly moving, shifting on my heels and doing this. I know what it's like to make a decision and then be now in a different circumstance. Now an unforeseen circumstance has attached itself to this circumstance, so I have to turn a heel and go this way. And that may mean the way that I would have gone if I knew it was going to go from this step, but now I got to go this way and that way. And like, you know, for when you're dealing with other people and manipulating others, like, it's not going to work perfectly. It's not this, like, you know, chess match where you can, like, you know, backwards engineer the moves and say, oh, this is where I got trapped. Believing Cheney stories like fun and all, but I just don't think it's real life.
Okay, and just not to derail, but Dr. Kasbah actually states that his doctorate is in psychology, so you're a psychologist. Well, I would really love to know what you think about the Zodiac Killer, and you know, you don't have to diagnose anyone, as Dr. Todd Grande would say, speculate about what may be happening. Well, Dr. Kasbah, we've been talking a lot about was the Zodiac a schizophrenic or not. I mean, you can give your response in the comment section down below in the live chat. Do you think the Zodiac was a sociopath? Do you think he was a narcissist? I mean, you're a psychologist. I would love to know your more professional response than mine.
So we got all these multiple degrees. Okay, in the Aries symbol is the first symbol in the Zodiac legally, and it's used as rebirth, and it's rebirthing. The texts are like I don't give a fuck what kind of doctor you are, bro. Like, this is not making sense at all.
Well, I mean, the stuff about the Aries symbol, we aren't even completely sure the Zodiac used the Aries symbol in the Z13. Some people think that that's an anchor. Some people think, for people in the chat, I know you guys are all familiar with the Zodiac case. The Z13 has a symbol that looks like a rounded W in it, and some people call it the Aries symbol. It could also be a symbol that's borrowed from a Greek book from Herodotus. Once again, giving a shout out to C.G. Karras. I praise his book all the time. The Zodiac, Murderers, Histories, Ciphers, and Crimes. He found, you know, a page from the writings of Herodotus that has a very similar set of symbols that have been reversed. And I'm not convinced that that's an Aries at all.
No, me neither.
Oh, Captain Jenks, the best witness is Brian Hartnell. I agree.
No, I disagree. The best witnesses are the Robbins kids.
Oh, I thought you meant like out of the victims. I thought you meant like Brian Hartnell more so than Mike Mageau. Yes, of course, the Robbins kids, but I thought you meant out of surviving victims.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, but yeah, I guess Brian Hartnell is the best out of surviving victims. Yes, but to call that concrete, or his witness statement concrete, that's a different thing.
I think Brian Hartnell will be the best for judging the Zodiac's size, voice. Stature, posture, bulkiness. The Robbins kids, of course, the facial expression, facial features. Sure.
I don't dispute that he'd be the best. Whether or not he would be correct, I think is different.
No, we have no idea if he's correct or not, because, I mean, when sometimes people draw composite sketches based on witness testimony, it looks nothing like the killer.
No.
So the same could be true about remembering the person's voice or their size.
Look, in the...
Well, remembering a sketch is different than remembering, right? Because, like, at least a sketch can be put down into something concrete that can be looked at again later. That, like, again, yes, is off of memory, but you can put it down. Like, we can't recreate the octaves of someone's voice and do that through memory in the same way that we can visually, right? So, sure, sketches have value, of course, but like, I think the whole voice thing is fucking outrageous.
Look,
now,
with...
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead, no, please, Jerome.
Nancy Over's whole thing, I think, is crazy. Like, I'm not calling her a liar by any means. I'm not calling anyone a liar. I'm just saying it's really easy, and some backs me up in this, for people to think they're telling the truth when it comes to stuff like this.
On one of the very first episodes of Black Box Online Radio, I told this story, which I stand by to it now. Back in West Virginia, when I was 17, I worked at Pizza Hut, and I would take the orders over the phone, and somebody called, and then, like, I would swear, what? Did I just talk to this person 5 minutes ago? I mean, they had the exact same voice. I really thought it was the same person. Turns out it's a different guy. It's just, they're from the same part of the country. They're from our same town. They had very similar voices, probably the same age. They're probably both, early 40s men.
You also
and I couldn't differentiate voices 5 minutes after talking to somebody on the phone. So to do something.
You're also in no way
41.
motivated to remember.
Yes. And
That's
this
what I'm
happened
saying.
more
Like,
than once. Mind you.
yeah, I walked down the street by a killer today, and I'm not looking for a killer looking at people. Sure, I could have walked by him and I could think about maybe what he's wearing or whatever in that moment or whatever, but I'm looking at you and trying to remember you. Like, it's just so flawed.
Okay, so now Jerome, by chance, can we look at that comment from Fire Pixie again? Can you pull that one up? Talking about the executioner's hood, they went through that much trouble to make it. Is it that much out of the question that they might take the bangs of the wigs and somehow sew them to the inside? You know, anything is possible. That'd be a very, very sneaky disguise. I mean,
I don't see why they would further try to fuck with their vision, especially if they're wearing sunglasses over top and then you have the hair over top. Like, it just seems like an unneeded layer.
I think it's improbable, but I mean, always open to new ideas.
In between, there's three possibilities: real hair that's falling down through the eye holes, it's fake hair that's falling down through the eye holes, and it's loose threads from making a mask that Druzer says, which I do think is pretty good.
Yeah. Druzer and I were talking that out on one of these panels. Yes, I think that's entirely possible that those could be.
Yeah, Nancy. Can you put up the Nancy Slover so it's Gaikowski the Zodiac voice?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, this is what we were talking about when we said Nancy Slover recognized the voice of the Zodiac 40 years after she spoke to him on the phone. She was the dispatcher that took the call after the Blue Rock Springs shooting, and she said it was Richard Gaikowski. That relates back to my Pizza Hut story, which I swear to you, that happened more than once. That happened, you know, not every day, but from time to time.
I'm not saying Nancy Slover is a liar, but I think Discovery Channel, lights and cameras, memories, people saying this could be the person, the story. However, I wasn't in the room, but I think it's easier to believe. I think Razor tell us Nancy Slover's wrong over Nancy Slover is identifying the voice 40 years later. She's
not a liar. She's mistaken.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Like, and people often jump down my throat and say that, like, oh, you're calling people liars or you're that. It's just like, no, man. I'm wrong about a lot. Like, my wife will be like, well, no, you didn't. We did that Saturday or something. I'll be like, oh, fuck, you're right. Like, you know, people are wrong, man. Especially Discovery Channel's there. Especially when Netflix is there dropping checks on your doorstep. You know what I'm saying? Like, especially when, oh, don't you think that happened? This could have happened, and then this could have happened. Don't you think this could have happened? And then, okay, clip that little part here. That looks good. Like, I know. So I used to be in entertainment and media. I've seen a bunch of people do interviews and see little points get clipped out or big headlines and all this. Like, it ain't that simple. It ain't that simple.
Okay, now some people are saying in the chat that they don't want to hear from Dr. Casbah, but I will go through his comments real fast because I did ask him the question, and about like the Zodiac's mental health and personality because he's a psychologist. And where is the first one? I want to get the first one. Oh, yes. PTSD causing as a child, and he is remodeling. He's playing the Batman vigilante, and he has the type of personality that Zodiac has. Oh, where he has the type of personality. So he has post-traumatic. Well, this is something that actually we can discuss. Did the Zodiac Killer have post-traumatic stress disorder? Quite possibly, if he were ex-military, or just even being a victim of abuse when he was a kid. A lot of serial killers would be victims of abuse. Playing a Batman vigilante victim, I'm so torn about this one because it's possible that he's actually trying to be a Batman villain, or he's just trying to be a villain, period. Doesn't necessarily have to be a Batman-style vigilante. It could have been inspired by something else. Or maybe he's just trying to be a 20th century Jack the Ripper. Very, very few pieces of information tell us directly the reason why the Zodiac is doing this, like the exact motivations. We can speculate all day long, but we don't necessarily know based on the clues that were left behind.
Yeah, like, no. I mean, a lot of what's being said by Dr. Cow here, and no offense, brother, but it's unfounded, and it doesn't add to the conversation. This stuff about them knowing his sister, reminding him his father and stuff like that, like, you're talking to three people who know this case pretty well, at least in the way of off-the-cuff details, and you're just in another realm of things, and I'm just not here to discuss those types of theories. But the Brian Hartnell has not commented on Geik voice. Adds to the conversation.
As I understand, Brian Hartnell openly stated that it's been too long, and like if people are like trying to track him down to get him to listen to voice samples of their suspect, that he is unable to remember the way the voice sounded, which is fair. 56 years or whatever it's been.
Yeah. That sounds way more realistic than somebody actually being able to positively identify it 40 years later, right? Which is why I tend to believe Brian Hartnell, because he's never really put himself in a sensationalist point. He's never a light. He's never really tried by any means or be a part of any real documentary unless there was real. David Fincher obviously is going to convince a few extra people than like the Discovery Channel or other people like that will, right?
Jerome, can you pull that back up?
But I think Brian Hartnell's, I think the lack of other people who have heard Zodiac's voice, that being the other dispatcher that took the call after the I can't remember that person's name right now. He's never been approached to listen to any voices, according to the 2007 documentary. And Brian Hartnell has said that he hasn't positively identified it either. So I think the fact that only one person has said that that's the voice that they listen to, while others haven't, speaks more about the validity of Nancy Silver's comments than what she has to say specifically.
So that comment that was up on the screen, the Zodiac male victims all had glasses, and some of them survived to live to tell the story. He killed Paul Stein because Stein represents his father. Now, Mike Mageau may have worn glasses at some point in his life, but was Mike Mageau wearing glasses when he was shot by the Zodiac Killer?
No.
Mike Mageau is mostly photographed without wearing glasses. Now, this might be a detail that has escaped me, but...
And David Faraday was not wearing glasses.
David Faraday didn't wear glasses either, so... or
I'm
once
confused
again,
as hell as to what we're talking about.
Well, he said. Well, it says right here, the Zodiac male victims all had glasses. I'm like...
Well, I understand it in context. That's actually no. I understand the words that I'm reading. I just don't really understand it in context. Like exactly like you guys are saying. Like what? Well,
the second part of the challenge is question is, did Paul Stein represent his father? I can't answer that because I don't know how old the Zodiac is. The Zodiac could have been older than Paul Stein, and he wouldn't necessarily look at somebody like that as a father figure. I mean, if you want to say something like Paul Stein resembled the Zodiac composite sketch, I'll hear you out. Some people think he killed Paul Stein out of an act of self-deprecation. This guy looks like me and I hate myself. But that is just mental guesswork. That's just taking a shot in the dark, excuse the terrible expression, but I mean, we don't know that that's what the Zodiac was thinking.
No, that's true.
Zodiac Halloween card. We do know that Brian Hartnell said that Melvin Belli show call, the show call was not Zodiac. We know that wasn't Zodiac. When in 2020, when the cipher was decoded, he engaged in conversation and said that wasn't him on it. And I do believe him in that. Yeah, we know that caller wasn't Zodiac. We've known for a while that wasn't.
I agree. I don't think that was the Zodiac. And Brian did have the ability to remember the voice, and he said that's not the voice he heard at Lake Berryessa. We're talking
and
about,
that was much closer to the time.
Much closer. I agree.
Even so, we know it wasn't just from the decoded side.
Was Hartnell's son who convinced him to talk to Fincher? Fun fact. Well, great. I mean, Brian really provided a lot of details to David Fincher, which he shared on the Zodiac 2007 film commentary. David Fincher relayed Brian Hartnell's statements.
Yeah, and Kasbah, he said, I was a former police officer. A lot of witnesses are not good because they are traumatized when they witness something, and sometimes they flash back to another look, and they can change it immediately.
Former police officer, you've got multiple degrees in criminology and all these things and all this stuff. Like, I mean, guys, I really think think we're being taken.
No, because I know Kasbah has made he's composed a very, very elaborate suspect profile for Bill McReynolds, and you've heard a lot of it here. But what I think this represents, though, Zach, is that I often bring up the book The United States of Paranoia by Jesse Walker, which talks about how, as humans, we all do this. We arrange information into patterns. we look for patterns and we present them, and it helps us keep track of the
Our brain does
information.
it for us sometimes.
But no matter what your intelligence level is, education level, I mean, when you have people who are coming, like who have lots of degrees, yet they're going to have this type of elaborate theory on how one person was responsible for the Phantom Killer murders, the Black Dahlia Avenger, the Zodiac, and JonBenet Ramsey. I mean, Casbah is doing this, and he perhaps believes in everything he's saying, but he's arranging the information in a way that makes sense to him. It's pattern seeking, and everybody will do this. You will, I will, Jerome will, and that's
but isn't
exactly
that a detriment in solving crimes?
It's the biggest detriment in solving crimes that could possibly exist, because you're arranging the information in a way that makes sense to you, not about what actually happened. And that's
what I'm adamantly trying to avoid here in my research or dive into Zodiac is looking for patterns where they don't exist, right? That's,
what I told you guys is, whenever you ask me a question, the answer is I don't know, because I had to recognize at a certain point that even though I think this is what happened, I had to come down from my cloud and just be like, well, now wait a second, I don't really know that. That's just something that makes sense to me. I think that's a reasonable possibility, but that's not following the evidence. That's me pattern seeking. And yes, it's a detriment.
Right. But there are things that there's evidence that suggests patterns, and then there's pattern seeking, right? So it's not saying that all patterns are invaluable. It's just that we need to be careful about the ones that we can that we can show our work for, right? I mean, that's what we're trying to do, show our work. So like, so Dr. Casbah, like in his latest comment here, like, yes, you're right, he was narcissistic and likes theater. We know that.
Yes,
and he likes TV and film. We know that. And you say, if I'm not correct, if he's going to be theatrical. Yes, of course, but he was theatrical. So we don't need, and he references TV and films and movies. We know that. So, and especially very fringy ones. So it's not exactly groundbreaking information to know that he's theatrical and likes theater, or is at least somebody who was paying attention to like pop culture media at the time, right? So it's.
But Zach, to respond to one point,
there's a pattern to suggest it. That's a real pattern, yes, but that doesn't. It doesn't.
That goes beyond patterns. Those are facts. The Zodiac was talking about theater, TV, movies, sure, but pattern seeking can be fine.
Patterns, right?
Pattern seeking can be fine. Pattern seeking to get a desired result is not fine. I mean, unless you're the 1 in a million person who actually has the right suspect. And then, compounding everything is when you're pattern seeking to get a desired result and looking at a true crime case, almost certainly you're going to be wrong. You've chosen a suspect, not you, Zach or Jerome, but the royal you. You've chosen a suspect, and then you're just looking for supporting possibilities to make it fit. They talked about this in the his name was Arthur Leigh Allen documentary. That's taking your suspect and the Zodiac Killer, making a Venn diagram, and you just keep adding on these circles and layers to it, where you just have 7 unbelievable coincidences. And I forget the guy's name who said that in the documentary, but he's like, that's not evidence. And he's right.
No.
That's just choosing a suspect and finding supporting reasons about why you've chosen the pre-chosen suspect.
For sure, but that's not. You're not entirely. It's not. It's both, right? Like, I mean, Ted Bundy was convicted on that.
I mean, can you say that again?
Like up until every crime ever was solved on that.
If you follow the facts, following the facts, I think, is different. And then, like, using the facts to lead them to a suspect versus, I think this person looks like the composite sketch. Let me find a bunch of supporting points. Why
exactly.
And we
talked about this before, where like composite sketches and particular facts in a case are more interesting after we found out who did it, and then we can look back and say, oh, this is what we got right and wrong, and these are the reasons why, and this is information that we can keep in mind going forward, trying to identify these people and stuff. But that information is more valuable after that person is identified based on circumstantial evidence or DNA or forensic evidence, more so than just like, you look like this or sound like this or this person remembers that, So I just want to keep in mind that since DNA evidence has come out, yes, we go, oh, it's all circumstantial. But again, up until the early 90s, late 80s, every crime ever was solved basically on circumstantial evidence. crimes can absolutely be solved on circumstantial evidence, and there are enough coincidences that occur to be able to say, like, all right, this fucking guy did it.
Yeah. Let's look at DNA, for example. The Golden State Killer case, that's following the facts. That's not pattern seeking to get a desired result. That's not even pattern seeking with these Venn diagrams and profiles and so on. That was following the facts using genetic genealogy.
Yep. Yeah, true.
So, yes, but John Wayne Gacy was following circumstantial evidence and then planting evidence to be able to actually to get the second warrant in his house. The receipts in his in the garbage. Ted Bundy was convicted on circumstantial evidence. All circumstantial evidence. BTK was arrested on circumstantial evidence, or came into suspect on circumstantial evidence, and then was convicted based on DNA evidence. But like, I'm just trying to say that it's not like circumstantial evidence isn't nothing as long as it's fact based and not, you know.
But there is one thing though, like you can have an initial suspicion about somebody, and then you can follow that suspicion, and I would call that following the facts versus pattern seeking to get a desired result.
Agreed. I don't think Arthur Leigh Allen's investigation is in any way pattern seeking.
That's a very good point, because Arthur Leigh Allen was the prime suspect of law enforcement, publicly named. It's not something. Here's another one. Zach, here's another one. My daddy was the Zodiac. Now I'm gonna find 200 reasons why my daddy was the Zodiac. Pre-chosen suspect, pattern seeking to get a desired result.
Fucking bullshit, man.
Versus someone who's actually been investigated by the police.
Yeah, and these people who claim like I'm an asshole because I throw shade on these like ridiculous theories that can't be substantiated, just because I want to further a conversation that is like based in some sense of reality as opposed to like some other fucking warped of reality that a person wants to create, where they throw their kin under a bus so they can write a fucking book that'll sell 8 copies on Amazon. Like, it just drives me nuts, dude. I find that I don't really like respect those types of people as true crime enthusiasts. I think that they're narcissists through and through.
Yeah, there is a lot of ego.
I'm a pretty harsh opinion guy when it comes to this stuff, man. I think it's crazy. Just some of the way that people operate and talk in these active groups. Not all of them. Some of them are fantastic and very fact driven. So I don't want to sound like I'm discussing all of them right now. But there are some people out there that are just like clearly not trying to forward the case or take part in like a thought experiment or really think about this in a way that is practical and logical, right? Like, people just want to dance around in their own little.
Now, let's be clear though about something though, and this isn't even a comment that you made. This is just one thing that I want to share. Sometimes people write true crime books that are actually based on years of hard work, real investigations. They're written by people who are genuinely trying to solve the mysteries, whether it's the Zodiac case or the Jack the Ripper case. And they're doing this from a very honest place. And they are following the facts. They have the initial suspicion. They are following the facts. Maybe they got the right person. Maybe they didn't. But it can come from a place of honesty. And one of the things that people get accused of all the time is grifting. Oh, they're just writing a book for the money. Some people are actually trying to share their findings because they want them evaluated. So I'm not at the point where I just dismiss everyone. They're in it for the money. No. Some people really believe that they have found the strongest suspect or person of interest, and they just want to share this message to as many people as possible. Yeah. And they'll accept the result no matter what.
No, me neither. I was responding just to specifically like my dad's the Zodiac. Like, that is a specific one that I just think is, or my grandpa or whatever.
Zodiac Killer Halloween card says my butler was the Zodiac. Well, I'm glad you're wealthy enough to have had a butler in 1968.
Well, I watched a Vietnam documentary, like a Vietnam War documentary, after I watched like Zodiac thing one day, and I couldn't believe how many Zodiacs were in Vietnam. They're all Zodiac. They're every single fucking one of them is fighting the war. Like, it's crazy how much everybody looks the exact same back then, and like
So,
talking about my grandpa. It all starts with they resemble the sketch.
To Dr. Casbah's point, though, the Zodiac may well have had PTSD, and that was something that triggered his responses. I think that it would be more likely that he had a childhood form of PTSD. I mean, like, we don't necessarily know if the Zodiac had been to Vietnam yet, or something where he was a World War II veteran or Korea veteran. We simply don't have those pieces of information. I would expect that he'd experienced some type of abuse as
People
a kid.
learn that here, man. They don't. You know,
Child abuse is perhaps the most important factor, most driving factor to becoming a serial killer.
Of course, he had PTSD of some kind, man. Hurt people. Like that's the way it goes.
But what is this latest comment that came in? You can change your MO. You can change your ammo, and you can change your victimology and signature, but you can't change habits of somebody. Habits are with you for life. Oh, now, Casbah, are you just like, what do you mean you can't change your habits? Habits like what shows you watch quite often, what books you read quite often. Often habits names the things and places that mean things. Zach, what do you think about this one? I mean, I know you're a psychologist, Dr. Casbah, but I change my habits.
I just don't agree. Like, and I think that there's so many examples to be shown. Like, there's lots of killers out there who change their habits specifically to avoid detection. They gain weight, lose weight. Look at their change their MO. Like, I mean, habit. Like, we're not talking about like waking up in the morning. We're talking about something that you think about, something that you're doing, that you're like a plan that you're trying to carry out and activate. So like somebody who's motivated enough to get up in the morning and go and try and get away with murder, I imagine is motivated and think how they're gonna, all the outward steps beyond that. It's not as if it's just like a habit that I don't think about, like as if it's when I it's not the same.
But like you see though, Zach, one thing about this is like you like the same type of books. We got to get that back. You can't change the habits of somebody. Habits are with you for life. And it's talking about like what books you read quite often, and habits mean things at places. So like the types of books that you read,
So you mean interest?
I don't know, for me that changes. Like that changes all the time. Yes, I regularly read true crime books, and I have for many years. But I got like a science book over here. I used to read about science all the time. I don't really do it too much outside of the crime world.
I got obsessed with the Zodiac Killer in my mid to late 30s.
Fine. But here's one though. I used to start every day with the morning cup of coffee, and I finally reached the point where I'm getting so old that I don't want to drink any coffee at all because it gives me acid reflux. So I start the day with something else now. Like we're talking 25 years, starting every day with the morning coffee.
Yeah.
Lately, I don't do that anymore. And I don't know if that's a habit that you mean. Now, there's a statement from the profiler, Pat Brown, when she said that if you're messy at home, you're messy at work. And a serial killer is going to be messy at home, messy at work, and messy at the crime scenes. If you're neat at home, you're going to be neat at work, and you're going to be neat at the crime scenes. BS, nonsense, hogwash, baloney. I'm pretty messy at home, and I'm very neat in my workplaces. I actually like things to be very organized. Sometimes I can even be meticulous in the workplace. Why? I don't know, but I just
I'm not like that. That's interesting.
I found that that's just from my own experience is really different. So I think someone could be very messy at home and be a very neat serial killer.
Yeah, fair enough. I would tend to think the other way because I'm a pretty neat and tidy guy, and like my workplace is fairly neat and tidy. Everything is going in like it. Everything in my life is fairly clean or whatever, maintained to the same level.
Sure. Captain Jenks, you quit coffee and switched to scotch years ago. If that's what works for you, more
people
power
change,
to you.
man. Like, and people change for a multitude of reasons. We could sit here all day and speculate on all the change and not come up with the one as to why Zodiac did or whoever, right? So,
But
we're all complex animals, man.
I really do think though there's a little bit of truth to that statement. Like I like the same type of books always. I'm looking around at my bookshelf right now, and mostly the same things are there, like the same type of novels that I would have read as a kid. And I am a lifelong true crime follower. I mean, the science one, I think, is the best example. There's like this science book here, but yes, your passions go in and out. And, like when you're a teenager, maybe you're obsessed with the arts, whether it's music or theater or filmmaking or something. And then, like years later, you might not have the same level of enthusiasm for it.
True. Yeah.
I guess like
I would say things stay with you, though. I agree. Like things stay with you, and enthusiasm to some extent stays.
But like to say that habits don't change. I mean, I develop new habits. And I can get rid of old habits.
No, that's impossible, man. The habits change all the time.
But yes, like so I guess we have to give some credit there. But what's this one from Fire Pixie? I was just thinking that if there is any way whoever or whatever was the Zodiac could see all the fuss still being made about him, he'd love it. Yes.
Of course, 100%. He liked it up until the day he died in 1991.
I'm not convinced.
No, me neither.
I got to go pretty soon, guys, here, but to spend the last few minutes on the topic of why he stopped, I truly think that there's a lot of viability to the idea that he sat there and said to him, I've created this huge persona of Zodiac. I've killed these people. I'm feeling so happy with myself now. And he goes and so he goes to Ralph Spinelli, that we know has a history with a criminal history with to some extent. We know he's socially awkward to the point where he might not even give all of the weight to their previous experience, to his new introduction, whatever, in the plan that he's trying to commit. Like it almost shows like his weirdness with social skills, where he thinks that like, oh, he didn't snitch on me for that first time. Maybe he's a good guy that way. And decides to go to him and offer him like, his hitman services, especially from somebody like Allen, who would think crime probably went down a certain way, like movies or comic books, and then in reality come down to, have to face the reality that it's in no way or shape or form the way that it's portrayed in comic books and movies, that it's not every criminal is a killer, not every armed robber needs a hitman on the side that he can call, and all those things. Like most criminals are circumstantial criminals. They're not like all murderers or narcissistic psychopaths and things. So I think he stopped because there was just nothing in it for him after a while, and I really think, just like we said, to bring it back to the idea of interests, it just became not so interesting after a while. And as forensics increase and the people's ability to identify increase, I mean, the juice becomes less and less worth the squeeze over time. And again, I think a guy like Arthur Leigh Allen gets to live in the best of both worlds. I think it's really weird. Oh, sorry, I'll leave it there as my Ralph Spinelli thing and let you guys talk.
All right, well, Zach, thank you for being here, and I'm also going to be getting off too. One more time, I'm Ned Dehan from Black Box Online Radio, and I released the
my wife,
Zodiac Killer News.
Sorry, someone commented, Zach, you got slave labor behind you.
Oh, Zodiac Killer Halloween card. Why do you got to say stuff like that? What's wrong with you?
She's working on her spit. What are you talking about?
Anyway, Zodiac Monday on Black Box Online Radio. Thank you to everybody in the chat, and thank you for everyone for sharing things, and I appreciate all of you. I guess I'll leave my final things on why did the Zodiac Killer stop the way Zach did, and that would be that I think that he had enough of a persona that was created where he could concentrate on writing the letters. It could be for any of the reasons that we listed off. Power assertive killer, he's proven that he can get away with it, afraid of getting caught. I don't know if we have enough information to say any of those directly. It could be a combination of those. But I think he had already proved that he could commit murder. Everybody in San Francisco knew who he was, or anyone who read the papers anyway. Most people knew who the Zodiac was at that point. So they then he can concentrate on making threats, and he doesn't actually have to commit crimes and get his hands dirty.
Agreed. Yeah, I agreed.
So, guys, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jerome.
It was a
Take
great...
care, Jerome. Appreciate you hosting us, sir.
I'm really happy because it's always a great conversation, and that's great to talk about different perspective and different idea and different view of the case, and it's great. Always great to talk about that.
Quickly, Ned, did you get my? I signed up for your buymeacoffee.com. Did you see?
I did not. Let me have a look now.
A couple weeks ago, I did. I get my notifications or whatever that I gave it to you. I'm not sure what my name is under the thing.
On buymeacoffee.com?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll have to look through it again. Oh, you don't know what your name is or what name you used?
Yeah, I'll check and I'll message you privately. I wanted to see if you got it or whatever. I just signed up. I felt bad that I went so long not signing up, and I think anybody who listens right now should sign up for buymeacoffee.com, or if you got YouTube membership popping or whatever. But man, I really respect the tenacity that Ned pushes through the Zodiac case with. Like, you really are the one that keeps me engaged week over week listening to things. I think that's the case for a lot of people as well. And I think more people should give you money.
Well, Zach, thank you so much for that. Greatly appreciated. And, Jerome, once again, it's been great to be on the show. And all right, well, I'll be with you guys.
Really great to have you.
An episode about the Zodiac
Peace,
Killer.
homies.
Bye.
Peace, guys. Bye. So it was great. Yeah. So I'm going to tell you some stuff that we don't have talked today, but we are going to talk in the next episode. More possible crime. So we are talking about the non-canonical crime. The Zodiac versus the Mind Control Projects by Louis Jolyon West. Jolly West. The CIA, Project MKUltra, Bluebird, Artichoke, the new declassified GFK files, which is not really related with the Zodiac, but sometimes it could be. For what it, there was other question for the topics. Was Zodiac known to the police? Was Zodiac known by a mental institute? I think we have answered to this question. Was Zodiac a mental patient? Was Zodiac a new killer, choosing random or targeted victims, or something completely different? So yeah, there is again a lot of question here because we don't know who the Zodiac is for sure. I hope we will know one day. That's why we are doing those round table. I'm sorry for last week. We were not enough to do a panel discussion, so I want to give you a good content. So if I can give you good content, I will not doing a show just for doing a show. I have a lot of respect for you, for my audience, and for my guests, for the panel, for everybody. And yeah, Cap Janks, me too. I'm for some GFK files discussion. Yeah, but everybody in the GFK world, the hardcore researcher like I am, was really excited by the release of the files, but I've read, I think, 700 files. So it's not so much because there is more than 80,000 files, or we don't know exactly what it is, but there is nothing really new. I think there is, maybe the new files about James Jesus Angleton from the CIA, but this is not really new. I've already make my I've already shared with you my idea about the involvement of Angleton in this case. Yeah. Maybe the CIA is watching for right now. Yeah. If you are watching, I'm talking about the CIA. Yeah? Okay. Yeah, what we see in those files is nothing really new for now, and I don't think we will find a file saying, yeah, it was the CIA who had killed JFK. No, never. The really, really, let's say, interested files were destroyed a long time ago. I'm sure of that. Even Richard Helms say by himself, "Yeah, I've destroyed a lot of stuff in the MK MK MKUltra project MKUltra, and other things." The CIA, no, no, the CIA doesn't work like that. We know that. Even the FBI, there is 2400 page of files they don't want to declassify, the FBI, even with the order of Trump to declassify all the files about the JFK. The FBI doesn't want to release those 2400 page of what we don't know. But yeah, I'm going to do a show about, or maybe not a show, maybe just a Q&A about JFK, if you are interested. Let me know if you are interested by that. Like I've said the other time, I try to do my best to give you the best content as possible with my guests and you. Yeah. Dr. Kasbah, are you really a doctor? Yeah, I think so. Why lying about that? No, I think Dr. Kasbah is a real doctor. And Kasbah, I don't know him personally, but I see him on the chat, on Discord, everywhere since, I don't remember. So yeah, I think that Kasbah tell the truth. He's not kind of man who's lying. Yeah, I would like to continue the show with Ned. Let's talk with Ned. But I don't know when for now because it depends about Ned. So yeah, I would like to continue that with Ned. And doing some stuff with about JFK for sure, but it's difficult to start somewhere in this case, the JFK files, the JFK case, because you don't know where to start. Where to start? Tell me in the chat where to start in the JFK files, in the JFK case. I don't know. I studied that for years and years, for yeah, approximately 30 years now, and yeah, I know a lot. I know a lot of things about the assassination and the cover-up. This is two different things. You need to understand that the assassination and the cover-up are really different. This is two different stories. But start with the Undertaker. Good, good one. No, but it's true. It's difficult to start somewhere. In this case, Oswald Undertaker. Yeah. No. Yeah. No. It's difficult because a lot of people are waiting to listen more about Oswald and his life, what he was doing, and where he comes from. Is he were a CIA operative or an FBI informant, and all those kind of stuff I can't answer to you, but it doesn't help because I can tell you, Oswald was secretly working for the Office Naval of Intelligence. And his job was to try to infiltrate the CIA to find the mole, because there were a mole in the CIA. And he did find who was the mole, and they cover up. They were in great stress to know that Oswald had figured out who was the mole. And the mole at the CIA was James Jesus Angleton, who was working in the same time with the Mossad of Israel. But talking about Israel right now, it's really touchy because with everything will happen now in Israel and in Palestine, it's touchy. So it makes angry a lot of people when you talk about Israel, the involvement of Israel in the Kennedy assassination. But when you connect the dot with Angleton, with the Dulles brother, because the Dulles brother are, it's difficult to explain. They've put a lot of money for the Third Reich. You know, the Third Reich in Germany, Adolf Hitler, and there were, let's say Nazi, the Dulles brother, Alan Dulles and his brother. And after the war, they have created the CIA. And I will not start with that because I will talk about that for hours and hours. But those people doesn't care about the religion, who you are. No, they care about the money they can have. They don't care about the religion, what religion you are. They don't care. If you can make money with somebody, it's great. You don't care if he's Muslim or Christian or Jew or the CIA doesn't care about that. So when you understand that the CIA was created by some fascists with the help of the United States, because they need money, so they have it's a it's a lot. So I don't know where to start. So it's difficult. So if you have some good idea to where I can start in the GFK files, or in the GFK assassination, or in the cover up, because it's really different, tell me in the comment section, and we will try to do our best to give you the best. So since the last time, take care, my friend. Take care. Subscribe to next channel if it's not already done. Black Box Online Radio, BBOR. You can follow us on Twitter, on Facebook, on YouTube. You can subscribe also to Russ channel, Planet X Films Works. Thank you, Daxai. And yes, I can say something about him. He claimed that today, after Oswald passed away, two guys from the government, FBI, CIA, he doesn't know, came with the rifle and spent at least 2 hours, one or 2 hours. I don't remember exactly. Thank you, Fire Pixie. Thank you. They spend sometimes with the dead body of Oswald, and just after that, they find a palm print of the gun. But the gun was sent to the FBI. No palm print, no print, nothing. To the police, nothing. They have. Oh, thank you very much, Captain Jenks. Thank you very much, man. Wow, it's highly appreciated. Highly. You don't have to, but it's highly appreciated. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's like, I don't know, I don't remember who was telling that before, but it's a great rabbit hole. It's an huge rabbit hole. If you think that Zodiac is difficult, JFK is worst. Yeah, really, again, thank you very much. It's, yeah, like Fire Pixie said, you rock, sir. Yeah, for sure you rock. You all of you rocks. So I hope but thank you too. And you know, I'm just the host. This is the people we are here in the chat or in Dr. Money. Here in the panel or here in the discussion, it's they does a great work, a great debate, and you in the chat, you are all exceptional, great, exceptional, great. So thank you very much, my friend. I hope you will spend a nice week, and I will try to do my best to have let's say a bigger panel for next time. Maybe next week, or maybe in 2 weeks. I don't know yet. We need to figure that out, who is available or not, but we will do it. So thank you very much again. Take care of you. Take care of your loved one, your friend, your family, and stay true. See you soon. Bye.